either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And it's finally actually time for the most festive season, Christmas.
Oh yes, the joyous time of year where families get together, celebrate, maybe have pizza, maybe leave someone at home.
Yeah. I had a longer one for that.
Of course you did.
But yeah, we're doing Home Alone.
The classic, the joy, one of my favorites actually.
Yeah. Which we were very surprised when we were planning that we hadn't done this one yet.
Because it's one of those movies that every time you watch it, it feels like you just finished watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, when you read into it, you're like, I remember all these facts. Because it's ingrained that heavily, I think, into most, at least American watching audiences' minds.
And for a good reason, too.
Oh, yes.
We'll get into that at the end, because it got a little lucky in the marketing and release.
Oh boy, did it.
So, Home Alone is written by the legendary John Hughes, who brought us the Thanksgiving classic, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, as well as Uncle Buck.
Yes, and those who are a fan of John Hughes will not be surprised by that, because yes, the sets are the same.
Yeah.
He was famous for reusing them, and honestly, I like it, because it has given some intimacy to this movie.
Or more so the settings of it, because you see there's a lot of planes, trains, and automobiles in this movie for a portion of it.
Oh, yes. And also, just, like, he's such a Chicago guy that, like, half of his movies are all in Chicago. Yeah. And he loves to film on set, so, like, it all feels like a universe that maybe lives together.
It's like a better M. Night Shyamalan instead of doing everything in Philly.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, everything's just in Chicago.
But it's directed by Chris Columbus.
Yes. Stars
Macaulay Culkin as Kevin McAllister, Joe Pesci as Harry, Daniel Stern as Marv, and Catherine O'Hare as Kate McAllister.
Honestly, a stellar cast. Really impressive, too, because while on that list, Mac is the only child actor in the, like, star, half of this cast is children. There's granted, the actors themselves, several of them were actually teenagers and thus out of the special loopholes that Macaulay had to strictly adhere to.
Yep.
But there is a butt ton of kids that all had to be wrangled and timed to make this movie possible. But it's part of the reason why this movie is so good, is there's just so much chaos, so much family happening.
Yeah, it feels realistic as a family.
Yes. No. Okay, this movie feeling realistic in general, despite how batshit crazy it is, and how a lot of people have broken down very, like, detailed why on different levels and in different ways this movie could not possibly work. The fact this movie, A, takes itself very seriously, and frames everything in a believable light, is why this movie is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I'm really glad I went back to it. I kind of wish I had gone down the rabbit hole of watching all 6 of them.
I am glad I didn't. I got up to the third one before coming here, and once I got through the third one, because I originally was like, I'm going to watch them all. I haven't seen the 5th one in a long time. I now remember why I haven't seen the 5th one in a long time. I think my viewing pleasure will end with the 2nd one.
I stopped at 3.
Yeah. After the 3rd one, you just realize we're done.
Yeah. Well, actually, I probably haven't seen the 3rd one since I was a kid, to be honest.
I remember watching the 3rd one with so much anticipation, because I loved the first one. I thought the 2nd one was fine, like it was an okay sequel. And then I got to the 3rd one and I was stoked for the 3rd one. And I, as a young person, did not register that of course Macaulay Culkin is not returning as the main child. And to me, he makes this movie. He is such a fantastic child actor, and this movie really highlights his skills. And I'm not saying the new kid is bad. He does a great job. He's just not America's sweetheart. And
I think the 4th one is a girl. And
And granted, I get it. It's just the idea of, like, leaving your kid at Christmas is, like, truly what it boils down to, right? Which, truthfully, is what it boils down to. That's where the whole concept came from, was like, oh, don't forget your kids.
Yep.
In the end, it was truly the cast and crew who made this movie magical. And so many of them came back for the 2nd one that even though the 2nd one arguably is terrible, it still worked because there's that magic there.
Yeah. And so our sources for today's episode include the making of Home Alone, as well as commentary by Chris Columbus and star Macaulay Culkin.
Yes, and also a couple of interviews from Macaulay later in his life reflecting back.
Where this movie starts, Hughes came to Columbus after his previous film, Heartbreak Hotel, bombed, and he presented him 2 scripts, Home Alone and Reach the Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, now we see that he chose Home Alone, and Reach the Rock did eventually get made, but it wasn't until 1998. Columbus credited this as saving his career as a director, and I agree.
I agree.
Because he went on from this to do Mrs. Doubtfire, Bicentennial Man, the first 2 Harry Potter films.
Classics.
And now some of his more recent films are eh.
Yeah, but I agree. I feel like this was the, upswing he needed to, get all of these other good ones out.
Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, Hughes was supposedly a powerhouse in writing and could knock a screenplay out over a weekend or in a short time frame.
Good for him.
Supposedly, according to Columbus,
mm-hmm.
Home Alone might have been that movie that he wrote in a weekend.
Which, honestly, listening to him talk about it kind of makes sense, because a lot of this movie was pulled from his own experience. He says in one of the interviews that a big inspiration for this was getting ready to go on vacation and, teasingly be like, haha, better make a list. Better not forget the kids. But what if I did leave the kids?
Yeah.
What would happen if I left my children and I went on vacation?
It's a great idea.
It really is. And it could not have worked in any other time period than when this happened.
No, not at all. And the only reason Culkin's involvement in this movie began is because Hughes suggested him to Columbus because of his ability and performance in Uncle Buck.
Which is very good, because they did look at other children. Macaulay was not a write-in, they didn't write the role for him. They interviewed over 200 children-ish, and I happen to know one of them. He's a grown man now.
Oh shit, really?
I do. He plays in band with my husband, wonderful trumpet player, and from the very brief fun talk we had about this movie and his time as a child doing the audition, he is still just a little bitter that he was not Macaulay Culkin.
You know, I would be too.
I would be too, because honestly, granted, Macaulay had other credits before this. Like we said, he had another big movie before this. It's a huge reason he is Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of us, this is the movie that made him a home name, I think.
In general, this is the movie that made him, because before this, this is only his 5th movie role.
And for a kid, that's honestly a lot, because kids are hard to work with. There's a lot of rules around them.
Well, and that's why he was cast, is because 1, he could act, and 2, he could actually remember his lines.
Which is hilarious, because now that you listening to them talk about it, knowing that children remembering their lines is a big qualifying factor for whether or not you can even get the part makes sense on why a lot of movies with kids in them, kids have almost no lines, mm-hmm. and or just ad-libbed to an extent of well, they said that's good enough.
Yeah. Well, and something that I didn't know until listening to the commentary is apparently him being cast or just having a child as the main actor was or upset a lot of the adults, because they had come off of doing some larger stuff, which I didn't realize children being the leads was uncommon at the time. I mean, I do kind of understand it too.
Sure.
Pesci's name came up a lot in this discussion, so I'm guessing it was mainly Pesci, because he went from doing Goodfellas earlier that year, as well as Lethal Weapon 2 the year before, to now doing what was at the time a quote-unquote kids movie, or potentially a kids movie.
Yeah, no. And granted, eventually I think for some, granted there's a handful who famously held on to the resentment a little bit. But for some, eventually it kind of became this scapegoat of oh, well, no one's gonna watch this stupid kids movie. I can have a little more fun with it.
I'm guessing it was mainly Pesci, because
I think
just
so.
Out of curiosity, I went through some of the other bigger actors in it who were the closer to them.
Yeah.
But O'Hara, the biggest role I could find her in is Beetlejuice 2 years earlier, and
I mean, that is her big call to fame. Yeah,
and Stern, the only thing I could find that I recognized was the Frankenweenie short and Chud, which is a bad but fun horror film.
So the one that came up for the interviews, specifically much later, that I could dig up from cast and crew years later, remembering back on this film, was specifically Devin Rattray. He plays Buzz, the older sibling. And Granted, by this point, I don't think he was qualified as a child actor. He would have been like a teen, and so thus falling under different rules and guidelines. And he felt that a lot of the lines got given to Kevin's character instead of Buzz. And Buzz didn't have a ton of screen time. He really thought that there was like a lot that he could have done with it. Granted, as he's grown up, he has changed a little bit of his like wordage and vibage from when he was a teenager.
He's also been through a lot. There's a special feature of Where's Buzz Now, and
Buzz.
I thought they were making up a bunch of that stuff.
No, this poor he's had a life.
He dresses like Guy Fieri now.
Good for him, though. Like, follow your dreams, man. But, so as a teenager, he was very famously quoted as saying, like, that he had a lot of resentment on how much screen time Kevin got versus everyone else. He felt that, like, the final cuts really leaned more away from the rest of the family.
As they should?
Granted, no. This movie's a masterpiece in some regards. Like, I do not agree with him. However, as an adult, his later interviews, he does talk about how, as an adult, he sees that, like, maybe he was being a little bit much.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a teenager at the time. It's understandable. This was, like, a big movie that he was really hoping to, like, get his name out and doing stuff with, and he was just the bratty older brother.
A side character.
He was a side character. And then as an adult, he also kind of changed his tune as far as, like, why he was kind of a brat on set, and it was to help, in his older words, to establish that, you know, that animosity between siblings.
And it works. It
does work, because honestly, like, granted, Mac has got very good facial expressions, but the fear at the end when he goes, Kevin, what did you do to my room? That fear can only come from someone who has been yelled at by someone else.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Also, you calling him Mac just makes me think of Mac and Me this whole time.
I know. Okay, so for a long time, I would not say I'm a huge Macaulay Culkin fan, but I have followed his career rather well throughout his life. Really enjoyed his, like, podcast later in his life. That was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed the interviews he was able to do on that. I have always called him by his both first and last name, but we're about to talk about this man for a lot. And repetitively. So I'm going to try my best to not say Macaulay Culkin 800 times.
You could just call him Kevin.
I could call the character Kevin, but the actor famously does go by Mac as like a shortened form of his name. It was, I think, mostly for when he was a kid, because at this point in his career, everyone just knows him as the full name Macaulay Culkin. And while that's cool, it is a mouthful.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Shia LaBeouf. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of name to say.
It's like if you said my full name as well, of Nicholas Eggers.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, we don't need to all be full naming Macaulay Culkin.
Before we get into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, this movie famously has a lot of very good food and drink to choose from, but Pepsi is the classic.
I think it's only Pepsi and milk are all we see.
He does drink a lot of milk, and honestly, neither one of us can do that. We would die.
I won't drink milk to begin with.
I can't do it. I would die.
Ugh.
It'd be the end of me. So, cheers. But I won't lie. The urge I had to consume pizza and ice cream when watching this movie was real strong.
Yes, the in-between holidays dieting.
Well, and on top of that, much like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pizza, the pizza in this movie looks so good. Granted, I'm sure it's just like Little Caesars Pizza or whatever was like
it's Little Nero's.
Well, okay, that's a made-up restaurant.
No, it's as real as Angels with 30 Faces.
Which we will get to. I want that movie so bad. But I'm sure it's just like Little Caesars Pizza, because that's honestly kind of what it looked like to me.
No, that's what it's a parody of.
Well, as the discerning pizza connoisseur who has eaten at many a pizza joint throughout my life, I'm pretty sure it was legitimately Little Caesars Pizza.
But they could have used Little Caesars, so they got close.
Of course not.
Home Alone, it does start fun and playful with a little mystery or mysterious music to cover the credits and title sequences, as created by John Williams,
my gosh,
of Star Wars fame, who would later do Jurassic Park after this.
So, not just those are definitely two big ones, but not just those. The man has done music for so much. Mm-hmm. So much of the music that you know and love from movies is composed by this man. Granted, if you own one of the old DVD copies, because I do, I borrowed yours because you have the fancy Blu-ray with all the extra special features. Yep. I just own the one that just has the movie on it.
Well, I bought that too, and then as I started doing some digging, I'm like, oh, this DVD I have doesn't have anything.
Yeah, mine also has nothing. But you know what it does have?
What's that?
The wrong composer on the back.
Great.
So, originally, The OG posters and DVDs will say Bruce Broughton was going to be the composer, and he was, but unfortunately he was unavailable because he was too busy doing one of my childhood favorite movies.
The Rescuers Down Under.
Hell yeah, I love that movie. So, unfortunately, the change was not caught until, like, kind of late in the game, and so several posters had already been printed, the DVD poster had already been printed, and so, if you have an old copy like I do, it will say that on the back. It's wrong. John Williams, of course, did this.
You would have thought by the time the DVD came out, they would have fixed that or gone into the archives.
This sucker went to DVD so fast. I guess it was a VHS.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this is 1990. I don't think DVDs were that common.
They were the hot thing. That was like the hot Christmas gift was DVD. But I might have the VHS copy because I do have a wide VHS collection.
Yeah.
So all I know is the version I have does have the original like composer on it. I eventually put it back because I was not going to watch the same film twice because I was already watching it 3 times for all the commentary.
I don't blame you.
So.
But I also like the way they set this up. We get a fancy older house, and you can tell it's in an older area because of the rear garage.
Yes.
And one thing I think is funny is that they had to use a lot of fake snow, and the budget was really tight. And then after they finished shooting, a blizzard came in.
Which is hilarious, because at this point, fake snow was mostly potato starch, which, if it's kind of wet on the ground and you throw potato starch on the ground, you end up with mashed potatoes, which apparently was kind of a mess.
Well, it also makes me think of the same issue that happened with the previous movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah, they had a similar problem.
Where they were chasing snow the entire movie.
They really were. Granted, I will give this movie credit. The scenes where they were telling me that was fake snow, I had no idea.
No.
Up until literally this week when I watched the commentary.
Yeah, there's maybe like a couple shots where it's a little too crystally looking.
A handful. But like half of the time, like the camera is outside the house watching a blizzard-ish roll through. I legitimately thought, because it's Chicago, I assumed that there was actual snow during that scene.
Yeah.
Nay, it's potato starch and a shit ton of fans.
Yeah.
And it looks phenomenal. Also, for those of you who wonder, the address for this house is 671 Lincoln Avenue. This house is very famous. The outside has been in several movies, including Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and the interior was also in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It is privately owned. And
they remodeled it, and the inside is very ugly looking now.
It is. If you want to look at it, because I know you're a nosy person, the photos of the new version are on Trello.
It's on sale.
Yeah. So if you go to the on sale sites, you can see the new interior and be a nosy person like I was. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
And be snobby and be like, oh, I wouldn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Also, we have a good amount of chaos in the very beginning, and
it feels like such a perfect amount for Christmas too. Mm-hmm.
Well, and also the random cop just there. It's like, what's going on? Like it's such a weird juxtaposition of this chaos of this family happening, and some random cop just chilling there
in the most 90 ways possible.
Yes,
because the way they explain why Kevin is afraid to call the cops, and also do so in a way that is 90s believable, because this is a really rich neighborhood. Having a local police officer who's probably on parole in your neighborhood regularly. He's there to check up and let everyone know some updated safety regulations on what the lights you should do and locking.
That makes sense, because when he's asking the dad and he's like, so you in town for the holidays? And he says something like that. Okay, that makes a bit more sense.
Yep. This is the very smart, and it could not have happened 10 years after this movie was made, because neighborhoods like this stopped existing like this. Having a cop show up, granted a little bit of movie magic, but honestly not that unheard of. Having one show up at your school regularly, or have one that V's around the neighborhood regularly.
Yeah.
In a town like this, especially a Chicago-based one, makes perfect sense, and it works.
But another thing that also works and makes the movie, I think, have that magical undertone is that almost everything in this house is red and green or has some type of Christmas imagery.
It's perfect.
But it doesn't feel overboard. The way they put everything together feels like the house is well composed and it's just red and green throughout the year.
No, it 100% does, and it reiterates it towards the very end of the movie when Kevin bothers to dig out all the Christmas decorations that they weren't going to even put up because they were going to be in Paris.
Yeah.
What a good touch, because it feels Christmas-esque, which helps with the movie being set, because we've talked about Christmas movies in the past where it's set during Christmas, and the only Christmas part is maybe like a half a scene and a line, and the rest of it's just winter.
Yeah.
It's not really Christmas. This one feels like a nice balance of like reminding the audience it's Christmas time, while also balancing that chaotic feeling of family that you probably see once a year, trying to live in your house.
Yeah, no, exactly. And even then, with all the chaos going around, Kevin does start off as kind of annoying, and I mean, to the mom right away. And he also it makes him feel like a little bit of a brat. But as the movie progresses, or just this introduction, he is a bored, curious kid that just is a bit unsupervised. Plus, he's 8.
He's 8. He's the younger brother, so he's like already written as to be a bit more of the snob, the snotty kid, right? And then if you watch the other children, he does not act any different than anyone else in this family.
No.
That's why he works. That's why he doesn't come off as like a huge asshole. Is because all the children in this movie are weird or annoying. Yeah,
and Columbus had mentioned that part of his goal is that he didn't want to have an obnoxious child. And I think having him just being that a little bit annoying at the beginning works because he doesn't have that opportunity to continue to be annoying after the fact.
Definitely. And also, Mac says several times throughout the interviews how easy it was to just play a slightly annoying kid because he felt that he was, just in his natural state of being, a slightly annoying kid.
Yeah, they gave him a camera on set and let him walk around. And it's like
one of the special features.
Yeah.
And honestly, I can also see why that was extra annoying, not just because it's a kid with a camera on set, but also because as a kid who was being eagle-eyed watched on set on how much time he was allowed, what he was supposed to be doing with those hours, and they just handed him a camera and they're like, okay, go for it, but also be back in 30 minutes for your snack and your school time.
Yeah, well, it's a way to keep him entertained. Like, the mom tells him to go pack, even though, like, the brothers and sisters say mom's gonna do it for you. It's just something to get him away from her and have him be occupied with something.
Yes, and literally everyone else in this movie, again, is also slightly annoying. And granted, the children, definitely. I think they're perfectly written as, like, annoying older sibling or cousins, plus weird kind of, like, icky feeling younger cousins where you're like, you're too old to be, like, friends with them. Or they're a little bit weird.
Yeah, Fuller.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Fuller is played by his brother, Kieran Culkin.
Which, they had a foam chair to smush his face, and apparently he was very distraught because he had to come back to set to have his face smushed a second time for a better shot. Poor kid.
But, I mean, that's the good thing is, like, it has such a quick and brief emphasis on the main family members that we need to know. The one sibling or cousin calling him l'incompetent.
Yeah, his cousin. And then, I love the flash mob of adults. Because this is such a good representation of how a kid would, understand what the family is happening. Clearly he knows who the kids are, and he's made to play with them all the time, so they get a little more screen time. Mom gets most of the adult screen time. Dad is in a lot of those shots. And then we have the aunts and uncles, who are just kind of floating in the background, and we get quick understandings of them. They get one line here, they're, like, running from room to room. But we get no real introduction to them.
No, the only really memorable uncle or aunt is the one asshole uncle who's
trying to take the pizza
and kind of inappropriate a little bit.
Yeah, and honestly, the way they balance a big family like this, having all of these different characters, even if you didn't grow up with this huge family, you can so easily like picture this person being kind of like that person, or oh yeah, this aunt kind of reminds me of this person in my family. So having this huge array of almost caricatures, but they're very realistic and they get so little screen time and dialogue, you leave a lot up for the imagination, which then like helps the audience reconnect with Kevin's character.
Yeah, and also speaking of imagination, they do a great job of setting up the childlike imagination
100%.
Specifically with the not really even creepy, just quiet old man who's out there with a trash can full of salts.
Okay,
salting the roads.
I also have a trash can full of salt. Granted, I live in a house with a lot of concrete to salt.
Yeah.
And I have to salt it because it's going to be so icy to get to the garage, which is very far away from our house. It's not attached. It's like down the gravel road, essentially. Mm. And so I have a trash can full of salt because it's cheap to buy at the farm store big dog food size bags of salt. And then I don't have a shovel. I have a milk container that I've cut the bottom off of, and that's my scoop. But I love that this myth that the kids make about him, the one that my husband and I realized this year, and we've watched this every year since we were children, right? Since we could have eventually like opened our eyes to stare at a screen at Christmas, we've watched this movie. And this is the first year that we realized that the horror element that Buzz gets the kids to believe, that the bodies are in the salt, makes no sense spatially. Yeah, no, exactly. It's that childlike logic, and then, like, what's he gonna do with the mummies? He turns them into mummies. And also is actively digging halfway through the bucket with his shovel. How tiny are these mummies? Do they shrivel up like shrunken heads? Like, the math doesn't math. Nope. But it doesn't matter because we're now 33 years old, and just now realizing that the physical space on the trash can isn't big enough for a body. Yeah, no, exactly. And we get a little bit of humor mixed in with little Nero's knocking over the statue, and I love this statue bit because this is another one of those moments that ties this movie to make it feel like a realistic life-happening movie. Mm-hmm. Because my parents had a statue at the end of our drive that my grandmother hit with her car 3 different occasions. Yeah. And eventually it was concrete, I think this one was actually foam. Ours was concrete, and on the 3rd time it was hit, it shattered into lots of little pieces and now lives scattered amongst my mom's garden. Beautiful. But, like, that was a running joke in our family, because granted, this movie came out before we put the planter at the end of the drive. And every year she hit it around Christmas time when she came to visit. She was paying homage to the movie. One that I don't think she even recognized. Yeah. But I also do like how they build up the suspicion of the cop where his tooth glimmers a little bit, and then also on top of that, like him saying something like that. Yeah, it's a little suspicious. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it was intended, but there's not a cop car outside. No, there's not. Their drive. No, there's not. The other thing that's really smart and very subtly done is the color correction and lighting of this movie is brilliant. Mm-hmm. Outside is always intentionally a little bit dark or a lot bit dark, depending on how scary in the movie we are. And even inside, we don't get a bright and truly, like, full saturated Christmas colors unless all the family is together. Yeah, it's got that little bit of fuzzy Christmas nostalgia to it. Exactly. Well, and also, one last thing I like about this scene is rewatching it as an adult. Kevin's outburst, I feel, is a little bit justified. They are all kind of being mean to him. Yes. No, okay. And granted, I know this is a critique of more modern reviewers, that a lot of people have pointed out that, like, Kevin's families are dicks. Kevin is also an ass. Mm-hmm. He fits in with this family. Everyone in this family is a little rude to each other, and honestly, that is a very 90s Midwestern thing. Yeah. It was like a really standard stereotype to be, like, have your family all be a little rude. It was, like, very well played for sitcom level families. Granted, that was maybe a bit much at times. But, like, even, like, the happy family in Christmas films, like this instance, granted, we're playing it up in this scene specifically, but, like, having your family be mean to you, common. And also, like, Kevin's also an ass. Yeah. It works. But in this moment specifically, yes, you feel a little bad for him. I also find it hilarious that the pizza man managed to only have a single slice of cheese. A single cheese pizza is all they brought. Was what it's supposed to be, and yet only Buzz admits to ever eating any cheese pizza, and we know Buzz doesn't eat the whole pizza because we watch Buzz eat a single slice. He could have ate it all. I don't doubt that Buzz ate 1, maybe 2 slices of pizza before Kevin got in the kitchen. The rest of that family is lying to Kevin. Yeah. Someone else is eating Kevin's cheese pizza and just won't fucking mess up.
Yeah, this and the second movie are the reason me and my brothers, like, for some reason when we were kids, were obsessed with cheese pizza, like it was something, like, super special.
Oh, same.
And I think maybe because we didn't know there was such a thing as cheese pizza, because your parents always put some type of topping on it.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, cheese pizza, that's special. It has nothing on it.
We were informed as children that pizza, you had to tell them exactly what you wanted. So as children, we assumed that our parents were ordering cheese and olive, and that counted as the 2 topping sort of situation, which was, now looking back, a blatant lie to get me to not, like, ask for like 10 toppings.
Yeah, or the specialty.
Yeah. We did get cheese pizza not as an overly luxury, but having your own cheese pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was usually like half of the pizza might be cheese, and like, you're lucky if maybe 2 of those slices truly are just cheese.
Yeah, I was blown away when I moved back to the United States from Germany, and the school cafeterias had the single personal pizzas. I had
so good.
Never seen anything like that before. My mind was just blown.
Such cardboard garbage, but it was so good.
It was special.
It was. Bosco sticks especially, which was the pizza inside of a breadstick.
What?
We had Bosco sticks. And granted, I don't hunt very hard and I refuse to order food off the internet. But they were, essentially it's pizza inside of a cheesy breadstick.
Okay.
And that's what we had as pizza day at our school. And those suckers were heavenly. And I recently found them in a stall in a theme park not too far from here.
It sounds like a gimmicky calzone.
It is a gimmicky calzone, and I just assumed they were only available from the school lunch lady for decades.
Amazing. Our dumb childish beliefs, like them believing the mummies.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why this is, like, such a good, like, representation of family, because also we're about to just have everyone oversleep with no questions asked. Not a single person in this family wakes up on time.
No. Well, before that, they send Kevin to the attic, and the last lines is, "I hope I don't see you and any of you jerks ever again."
A classic, really.
Or any of you jerks again.
A classic line.
But also, I can understand him not wanting the attic. That attic looks cold as shit.
Okay, I was one of those kids who our attic was like a crawl space attic. We didn't like have like a nice attic. And I didn't know anyone who had a nice attic because we're Midwesterners and the attic is like a square in the ceiling you pop up and like that's it. There's no ladder to get into the attic. You don't store things up there. It is a space for bugs and mice. And so I was obsessed as a child with this idea that you could live in the attic. The Olsen twins had like a spy crime show-ish show where they had their office, their quote-unquote office.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it.
That was in the attic. Kevin getting to sleep in the attic. I did not understand Kevin's complaint here. I thought this was dope as hell, and why isn't his whole bedroom in the attic?
You're also a raccoon person, so of course the attic's gonna be appealing.
And also, like, when you're 10, of course the attic looks dope.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can do whatever you want up there. There's no rules in the attic, probably.
Yeah. Like you said, we are about to have everyone oversleep, but the way they set it up, too, I think just goes to the writing of Hughes and the direction that Columbus took this, because there's a lot of subtle things that they do that I think works really well, especially with, like, the music for, like, the evil, like, well, not evil, a more mischievous, like, feeling to, like, the wind blowing in, and just, like, there's some higher power making the wish kind of come true in its own way. Them losing the power and waking up to the doorbells ringing, which I guess no one in the family wakes up before 8 o'clock.
That's the part I have a hard time believing.
Yeah.
For me, this is the most unrealistic part of this whole movie. Granted, I understand there's a lot coming that's very unrealistic. You're going to tell me that neither of those 2 gaped-mouthed, snot-nosed children from the earlier where they were just staring at the police officer, you're telling me those 2 brats don't wake up at 5:30 on the dot demanding breakfast?
Yeah, I mean, one of their neighborhood kid is already up and dressed and bugging the airport guys.
Granted, I bet his mother kicked him out of the house at 6, and he's been roaming the neighborhood since. Yeah,
it's such a weird bit for him, too, but this is also one of those scenes where I actually don't mind the fast motion. It works quite well.
It's, okay, it is cheesy, but this movie is beautifully, perfectly set in the 90s. And I know the director talks about how he tried to make everything timeless with what he, like, approved for fashion and clothing and also, like, the styling of the house. And I appreciate his effort there because I do think it makes it feel like a little bit more of a classic film. This movie is painstakingly 90s. The alarm clocks needed, the looking at your wristwatch on the nightstand to double check the time could not have happened not even 5 years later with the introduction of Blackberries and personal pagers.
I'm gonna argue against that. I think we still have like maybe to the early 2010s because granted when I graduated high school that was the start of smartphones, but even then people still had corded phones. You still had a home phone. You had an alarm clock. I had an alarm clock.
Oh, sure. But I distinctly remember, like, my dad moving from just his alarm clock to alarm clock and the cell phone his work provided for him, which that doesn't turn off if the power goes out just because it's charging. No. The way that the, like, sped up motion of the, like, film looks is distinctly 90s in its styling, but it works because this whole film is 90s.
Yeah, and I think it's partially because of the music too, and they don't do something super cheesy like the Benny Hill.
Exactly.
Yeah. But also, there's a couple other little things that I think are interesting. One, the kid on the street or the neighbor kid, just string of questions, feels just like a continuation of, or a nod to Culkin's character in Uncle Buck. But also, there's one little line that the power company says to the mom that, hey, phones are going to be out for a couple days. And she just blows off the line. It's like, you did a good job of making these side characters give important information that we needed to know. And of course, we get the miscounting and all that stuff too. But
of course. And honestly, it is that smart writing that for me really like sets this movie apart, especially for a Christmas film, which are notoriously... you have to put a lot of things aside for those to work. Kind of the same thing with romance movies generally. There's a lot of assumptions you get to make. There's a lot of, like, logic leaps that you just kind of don't have to worry about. Because, like, don't worry about it. It's a fun story.
Yeah.
This one bothers to take the time to address a lot of the big questions. And I know it's been a recent trend for people to be like, this is such an unrealistic movie. If you pay attention, this movie explains why he can't call his mom, why he doesn't want to talk to the cops, like
why the neighbors are gone, because the kid even says a line that they're going to Florida, but the Culkins or the McAllisters are going to Paris.
Yeah, why he isn't going to go to his only other neighbor on the street who's home because he's the scary old man. Like, this movie's writing is so smart while maintaining that Christmas and child magic that, like, really is the backbone of a good movie.
Yep. And then also juxtaposing like the very more traditional music to Run Run Rudolph while they're running through the airport.
Yes.
I think is a great touch. Also, they didn't go through TSA. They just handed their shit in.
Okay, that is another reason why this movie's painfully 90s, because they leave their house with 45 minutes to get to O'Hare Airport, which for those of you who haven't been to O'Hare, granted, I know it's changed a little bit since this movie came out. That you could not do that today.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a 2-hour to get in the door sort of situation at O'Hare now.
Yeah, and
easy.
And flying in the 90s still was like that special occasion of like not everyone flew. You still drove. I mean, hell, 3 years later, my parents drove from. Well, they couldn't fly because my mom was pregnant, but drove from Colorado to Alaska. And even if they had the ability to fly, they probably would have driven anyways.
We drove to Disney World because, like, flying was an awful, like, big thing to do. And, like, we didn't do that until, like, a much later big, like this, like a big family trip where my uncle and his kids and his wife and my grandparents, all of us went on this huge family vacation to Florida. And that was, like, our first airport, like, big thing. And granted, like, my parents were both fairly well flown. And that was, like, my big, like, when I went back to school, and they were like, tell us one new fact about yourself. I'd be like, I've been on an airplane! Ha ha ha! And, like, it was a pretty common one to, like, compare as kids, like, have you flown in the 90s? Because, like, a lot of us, we flew maybe a handful of times as children.
Yeah, I probably only flew a couple times to Ohio, but I don't even remember how many times I would have done that.
Yeah, and, like, granted, you and I probably flew more than a lot of people because we had military and I had government parents that, like, I got to string along on their ticket.
Well, I flew a lot more after that when we moved, but...
Well, and then, like, once I got an adult and flying wasn't that big a deal, like, price-wise, I mean, it's still expensive, don't get me wrong, but, like, now I could fly much more, but 45 minutes to get from the suburbs of Chicago through O'Hare's traffic, and then into the airport and still make it to your gate, miracle. A miracle.
Also shows the family's a little rich without telling us until later on, too.
Because they have the airport shuttle come get them at their home.
They have the airport shuttle, and they're all flying to Paris, and first class for the parents, at least. But I think it's their uncle who's got them the tickets, though.
Yes.
But still, they're well off.
And I love that those two kids, the two open mouth breathing kids, the mouth breather children, are in the back in business by themselves. Sat next to some unfortunate soul. Yep.
And Buzzer, the sister, is watching them.
They're supposed to be watching, but they're like 2 aisles away because that's the only ticket you could get. And, like, they're not going to pay attention to those kids at all. Like, some strangers watching them. But my favorite part of this whole thing is if you are a discerning traveler like we are, you will notice that this was shot actually in O'Hare. And that's wild to me, because now you 100% could not do this. You would have to close part of the airport to do this, and they didn't. They filmed this while all the fare was still happening. Normal people had to get to their plane.
Hey, it's the 90s. It was a very, very different time.
It was, and the adults who are doing the running scene, they had an interview much later in life where they talked about how much fun they had in this movie. And this scene was a huge memory for most of them because they were running at as full speed as they could was the direction they were given. And some of the people on the side that they bump into are actual stunt people. Some of them are just normal passengers trying to get to their gate.
Great.
And they were like, yeah, every time we didn't slip or break a leg sprinting as fast as we were, it felt like a thrill. And I can totally see that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you gotta act like a kid again, basically.
Oh, and when was the last time you fully sprinted somewhere? As fast as you can go, you are late for your gate to Paris sprint.
I'm not a fast sprinter.
Me neither. So
no.
I don't do it. So that being such a big memory for them is fantastic because it is such a big part of this movie too. This was a lot of the advertisement, I think, as well. So it's cemented into my head.
Yeah, I don't remember, but
it was such a good scene.
Yeah, no, I mean, the scene's great. I just don't remember the advertisement.
I don't remember the, it's going to come out advertisement, because obviously this was, I would have been very young. But this movie was one of the weird ones that got special advertisement that it was going to be on later for the Christmas, 12 days or 24 days of Christmas. Because this was, I think, on ABC's list for a very long time of, the yearly movies that ran. And it's actually one of the jokes later on when they get to Paris, because they're watching Christmas movies. And those Christmas movies were also on the,
They're also watching Kevin watches Christmas movies, too. So there's, little sprinklings of other Christmassy things around that time, too. Kind of like that garbage Christmas movie I was watching yesterday, where it had the Christmas prince in the movie.
Exactly. And they kind of laughed because the movies they picked, they wanted to make sure they picked old movies so that they wouldn't have too much copyright problems, especially later on, as Christmas movies tend to trade hands, and they knew that was going to happen. And they accidentally picked, one of them they didn't. It was very intentional, but the movies they picked ended up being so overly played that they eventually became people were annoyed with them and wouldn't watch them anymore. And a lot of the lineup, this movie ended up replacing some of those movies on the TV lineup. And so the director laughs about it later on. He's like, yeah, I feel kind of silly that I cast those movies intentionally, be look at these stupid Christmas movies on they're all the time. Yeah. And it ended up being my movie.
Well, if I remember right, Kevin is watching, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, so it's not a fully, Christmas
No,
movie.
Kevin's attempting to watch adult films at home.
Yeah.
But when they're in Paris, they have on, I think, I think it was A Wonderful Life or maybe Miracle on 34th. I get the two confused occasionally, depending on which, quick blip is on. But yeah, those were movies that, they're still on every year.
Yeah. But also when they are on the plane, the Hope We Didn't Forget Anything paired with Kevin opening the door is a really nice combination of shots to set up. We knew that they left Kevin. Yeah. But they really, really left Kevin.
I love that, I love that Kevin is in the attic, so there must be some sound insulation, or Kevin sleeps like a frickin' brick.
No, exactly. Or
both. Because, they were not quiet about sprinting out the door.
No, not at all.
And Kevin wakes up and makes it all the way to the kitchen before he's like, wait a second. There's supposed to be a lot of people here.
Yeah, and they do a good job of cutting between the mom worrying and Kevin searching, where it's their minds are kind of like trying to catch up with what's happening, and she knows she's forgotten something, but she can't 100% remember.
And the way that they get that in between to help, like, really solidify that feeling of, like, oh, I've forgotten something and I don't know what it is, but it's important. That little, like, turnaround and that little playback helps solidify the rest of the panic for the rest of the movie. Because if they made it all the way to Paris and got off the plane and realized then that Kevin was gone, the argument that she is a terrible mother, like, granted, it's fair, she's in a different class of seating, like, they have the curtain closed.
Yeah.
It's a night flight, so, like, they're sleeping the whole way there, kind of. Or no, it's a day flight, but it's dark outside. I don't remember how that worked.
Because they're partway over.
It's not that long of a flight. I mean, it's a long flight, but it's not that long of a flight. I'm thinking it's just they filmed on set and they accidentally filmed at night because they had to film Kevin during the day.
No, it's a long flight.
It is a long flight. I don't think it's nighttime. Because if they leave, it's 6 when they wake up, or like, no, it's like 8 they slept in. It's like 8 or 9 they slept in.
So by the time
they get there in winter, I guess it would be dark outside. Yeah,
by the time she's realizing that they've missed Kevin, it's almost nighttime there because it's about an 8 hour I think it's more of like a 10 to 11 hour difference, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But on top of that, the children could only be on set during daylight hours, and every scene that was just parents, they intentionally shot late at night.
Yes.
So if we're shooting on a real plane, which I believe we did for these, yeah, it would have been nighttime because that's when the children weren't there. But yeah, no, having her have that, like, moment of doubt, going through everything, like, oh, did we close the garage? Did we turn off all the lights? Did we lock the door? Shit, Kevin.
Well, we haven't even gotten to there yet because there's a lot more of Kevin before that.
Oh, Kevin's having the best day of his life.
Not yet. Because that's the thing I like about this, is that Kevin has all that worry still, and he's trying to figure out where people are at. He's going into the basement of things that a place he obviously doesn't like.
And, like, he logics it through like a kid. Like, their cars are still there. So that means they haven't left.
Yeah.
Because there's, in a kid's mind, no other way to leave.
Yeah, one thing I do appreciate that got scrapped, the furnace was supposedly going to have a CGI shot. And it would chase him, and they couldn't do it because of the budget. And I like this version so much better because it gets the point across of how simple things that kids might not fully understand is terrifying.
I'm also glad that it didn't happen because I think it would have been a little too much. Interesting that that's part of the, like, oh, that's too much budget. This movie is famously a very, like, low budget effort.
Yeah. It
was meant to be even lower. The original price that the director came with as what he thought he could make the movie, he was going to go to Warner Brothers with this insanely low budget Christmas film, and they said, yeah, we'll do a very low budget, like, I think it was like $70,000. Something insanely low. Or million, not thousand. No one can do that. Well, okay, so some people have, but that's a different group of movies. And so they were like, yeah, we'll do that. And then when he started, like, getting into the casting and getting into the production, he realized, no, we're going to go over that much. But I promise it won't be a lot over. And Warner Brothers, without question, went, no, dropping you. So they just dropped it altogether. And that's why it's now...
Fox?
No, 21st Century. I mean, it's Fox. But like, at the time, it was 20th Century was like the name, the big thing.
Yeah, still 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, but that's why they took it up. And they took it up in agreement that it was also meant to be a super budgeted film. And granted, it was. It went over budget several times. But that cracks me up that they had even considered CGI moment, because the amount of money that would have ruined.
Well, and it gets into the next bit, too, where he's having that sudden realization that, hey, his family was mean to him, and now this, oh, they're not here, turns to joy.
So now we get some of Mac's best faces. And this is what really... It's not the face. Yeah. It's not the poster face. But some of the best acting and faces for him that really solidified him as a child actor for a lot of us as far as, like, a household name. Yeah. Because he's having the time of his life. He's running around with his arms in the air like an idiot.
Yeah, it's a kid with full freedom. He gets to bust into his older brother's room and judge his girlfriend.
Which, okay, I love that little bit where, like, the director spends extra time. He's like, so we thought about this long and hard. We didn't want some little girl to grow up being the ugly girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little boy dressed up and then taken from the worst angle physically possible.
Yeah, I think they did like 2 of the producers' kids, and they chose the worst of the 2.
Yeah, which that's funny. Like, as you grow up, that would be a good, funny story. But, like, yeah, as you grow up, would you want to be known as, like, the ugly photo in Home Alone? No. Let's...
Unless you had a glow up.
Yeah, unless you're, like, actually, they took this purposefully, like, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. This is just some little boy.
Yeah, which makes it even better.
It's just so funny. And I love that he spends 4 seconds looking at the nudie magazine and is like, this is boring.
No one's wearing clothing.
What? And then goes straight for the fireworks.
Yeah. I mean, he's a kid. He's not he's 8.
He's 8. And they played into that so well.
Yeah. Well, and also, it shows his freedom of he's doing things that he never thought he would be allowed to do. Like, he's watching Angels with Dirty Faces, which... By the way,
I love this.
One thing I noticed, there's a very distinct bottom half of a Godzilla figure on the VHS player in the close-up, and then it's gone in the larger shots, as well as the VHS cassettes keep changing location.
So for a film that is meant to be very, like, they tried very hard to get permission for all of it. So, like, obviously the Christmas music, Williams made sure was all approved or out of domain so that they could use or rework it for the movie.
Yeah.
They had a lot of questions on books and whether or not they could get the licensing for books. Several of them, they were cutting it close, but they did it. I guarantee you the Godzilla, they realized afterwards, could not be allowed. A ton of the toys actually had the same issue, which is why some of them are fully made up. And then later, during the second movie, got released as actual toys, as, like, merch toys.
Yeah.
So, like, in the second film, there's, like, the talk-along, which he has in this film, but it's in the background.
I low-key now want... You know how people make those fake action figures or fake toys? The 2 paint cans is just...
That'd be hilarious. Just, like, Pello paint cans.
Something like that.
That'd be great. And then... famously, this movie. Clearly, because we were on a low budget, we don't want to have to pay money for that much of a movie. Even an old 20s, 30s, 40s movie. You'd still have to pay some type of money for it, right? So they just went, what if we made our own fake movie? And this fooled people for actually a really long time.
Yeah, I know at some point we thought it was a real movie that we just couldn't find anything on.
A lot of people did. This honestly did fool a lot of people until I think more interviews were released. And then I know the newer DVDs have, like, the whole making of the background movie. And then I remember the, like, fun facts that pop up along the screen. Once those started to be readily advertised and, like, available, then people realized, oh, this is a fake movie inside of a movie. However, with that said, throughout the years, it has been, like, teased multiple times that they are actually going to make this movie. I don't think they ever will, because it's a parody of several different other gangster films in Chicago-esque era. Like, it's perfect as it is. We don't need more. It's literally here just to have lines for Kevin to use later.
Yeah.
And if you're like, oh, but I would watch that. It is a parody of an actual one. I think it's Angels with Dirty Souls is the actual one. That is a real movie. It's similar. It's got a little bit of a different premise, but it's a Chicago gangsters. It's black and white. If you like the idea of watching the actual fake movie, go watch that movie.
What you just described is also Some Likes It Hot.
Yeah, essentially.
Chicago, gangsters, black and white.
Again, if you like the idea of it, this is a whole genre. There's 30 years worth of movies that you can watch of it.
Hey, Some Like It Hot also has cross-dressing men that don't look good.
That's true. I would argue that one might be, honestly, the easiest one to get a hold of, unless you're willing to either buy some older ones or maybe watch some with, sped up a little bit on YouTube, depending on who you are.
There's a lot of noir collections out there now.
And honestly, they're not terribly expensive, so yeah, like, it's not a real film. But that is disappointing, because it looks dope.
No, I exactly.
And I love the director's backing of this, too, because as the years have gone on, and, like, obviously, most of the stuff in this movie wouldn't work anymore because technology's advanced, he has stood by his direction to have Kevin watching an old black and white gangster movie in the 90s, because nowadays, obviously, kids would not be watching a black and white gangster film.
Yeah, I mean, even like that, by that point, you'd maybe have a Disney VHS or something. Yeah.
So this is clearly like a TV channel that Kevin's getting to watch. And that...
No, it's a specific VHS because...
He has the VHS of this. But
which the uncle recorded. Yeah.
No, I guarantee you the uncle recorded this from one of the TV shows, because this was me. I was the one who at Christmas time, because my grandparents had these stations and I didn't at my house.
Oh, okay.
Because they had a dish or cable, I don't remember which one, and they had like the Grit Western channel, and then they had like the Crime Noir channel, and like it played all these old films, and I got told regularly like, oh, you don't want to go in the basement, that they're watching grown-up movies. It's boring. And I go downstairs and I'm watching people get shot up, and I'm like, this looks cool, and they're like, yeah, I don't think you need to watch John Wayne.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, this is clearly, like, we've moved well past, like, kids watching this.
Yeah, but I also, like, it's there because it's the forbidden fruit that Kevin's not supposed to touch.
Exactly.
On top of the disgusting ice cream pile that he's eating. But
which looks so good.
No, it looks awesome.
Oh my god, it looks so good. He's picked every flavor in the fridge. It looks good.
Yeah. But I question, why would the uncle be watching this with the other kids? Okay,
so this is that dynamic that we don't get told about.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what the animosity is. We don't understand, like, who does what type of uncle, but, like, just from the couple of lines we have of him and the few times he's on set, he comes off as, like, the rude, bratty uncle who just kind of does what he wants. And then, like, lets others deal with it. Like, he takes the pizzas. He's like, oh, my brother, he'll pay for it. This is his house.
Ah, I see. The little bits of character we get that...
Like, it does, like, back up with... And, like, when they get to Paris and the mom's, like, frantic over the counter, and he's in the background just being like, I don't understand why we can't go on vacation. Like, Kevin's fine. He's 8.
I left my reading glasses back home.
Yeah, like, he's, like, not caring about the situation to the same extent that she is.
Yeah.
And so he 100%... And especially since we get almost no dialogue from his, we assume, wife, and we get to look at the mouth-breathing children, we can assume that his wife is a much more, like, quiet, or maybe mousy, or, like, maybe a little bit more into prim and proper things based off of her clothing, and, like, how she holds herself. She's never, like, the one getting in the way. She's just comforting kids. She's the one who picks up the sad one after he gets squished.
Yeah.
So, like, I can see this type of character being like, I'm at my brother's house and he's got a DVR. I'm going to record my movie.
Yeah. But one thing that I appreciate about this whole setup is Kevin gets this absolute freedom.
Yeah.
And we see this kind of theme in a lot of, like, Christmas classics in general, where you have to have that experience of being alone and have that perceived freedom of what it's going to be like. It's, or like what you lose, you have to be away from what you actually lose and experience being away from it. Like, It's a Wonderful Life. We also see this kind of repeated in Santa Claus 3, Nicolas Cage movie, The Family Man.
Yeah.
Elf even has it where he has complete freedom, and then when they lose him for that little bit, he comes back. Hell, even the Grinch is that way.
Granted, you are speaking of the live action Grinch, the worst Grinch.
Yeah. Go listen to that episode.
Because as we know, I firmly believe that the Grinch is justified in the animated version.
I mean, he's justified in the original too. He's kind of.
He's
Kevin.
justified in the real one. We just know famously, I can't stand that man.
I know.
But yeah, no, it is, and it's like a good theme for Christmas, because the whole idea of Christmas for a lot of these films is coming together as a family, and if your family is what annoys you, which, again, this is the 90s, that's kind of like a running gag, is that, like, nobody's family actually loves each other. In fact, I just watched, like, a 2-hour special on, like, sitcom families should have all gotten divorced, because nobody loves each other.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we explored this years ago at this point. If you go listen to our very ever second Spotlight episode.
True.
We did What Makes a Christmas Movie, as we proceeded to do, like, a Christmas movie and then Akira.
True, because, I mean, that feeling of love and kinship really is the essence of Christmas, right?
It was also the 50th anniversary for that one.
And honestly, that movie's so good, how could we not talk about it? No, and I think it's a fair commentary, and I think it's one that, like, even though that styling of, like, TV and movie family, which is portrayed of, like, they hate each other, they're always in each other's way, they seem really annoying. Granted, I think this movie does it well. Like, they're annoying, but, like, they're not that bad. It's your family. Other ones, it's like, wow, really? We really seem to hate everyone here. But, like, even though we have, as, like, a general writing practice, moved away from that style, like, now most cartoon sitcom families seem to like each other a bit more. It's still a pretty common trope to, like, it's a lot at the Christmas times or the holidays to have all these people in your house or have to go visit all these people. It can be a lot.
Yeah.
But it's better than not seeing them. Sort of, like, set. So it's kind of a timeless classic message.
And that's where it sits in that timelessness.
Definitely.
But this is also where we get the mom echoing kind of nice back to worrying a little bit. And I do appreciate that the dad's trying to be playful with her, but
he's trying to diffuse a very tense situation.
But it also is written really well where wherever this movie was placed, it works with him saying, it's the garage door. I forgot to close the garage door.
And that's always going to work.
Yeah, because
it's always going to work.
Wherever you place it, it's like, okay, well, then Kevin finds the garage later, or it ties back to why the garage is open in the first place.
And on top of that, that is such a classic, like, excuse for when you can't remember what it is you did. Of like, oh, well, it's probably a light, or it's a garage door. Yep. It's fine. It's not that big a deal. It'll be okay. The neighbors, well, they can handle it if they need to.
And it's that, oh shit moment, the annoying one's been a little too quiet.
Yes. And this is my favorite part too, is like several different people try to comfort her. She's just constantly like, I'm a terrible mother. I'm the worst mother that has ever lived.
If it makes you feel better, I left my reading glasses at home.
Okay, so I love this. At least 3, maybe 4, depending on how you want to count background characters, try to reassure her that she is in fact not the worst mother. Yeah. Her husband tries it, and granted, he's not trying too hard, because it's Kevin. Her uncle, not trying at all. Like, the worst advice. Granted, I'm sure it's his own, like, style, but I left my reading glasses does not compare to leaving a child at home. Yeah, no, it's them trying, but, like, I don't think the uncle's really even trying that hard. He's just like... And do you want to know that there is the third, and I believe final character, because I don't think the older lady she's trying to buy the ticket off of with her earrings.
Oh, that's way down the line.
I don't think they try and comfort her.
No, they don't.
But eventually, she does find comfort. And I love that like, normal rule of 3 is broken by the most out of left field person possible in this movie. And he's my favorite character.
Yeah. Well, we will
get to him. I have much to say about him.
He's one of my favorite actors in general.
Oh my god, I know, right?
But we also get some more fun with Kevin. His freedom is still there. The misaligned sled that he totally would have ran into the wall.
Yes, and once he points it out, you can't unsee it. But it works. And like, I love that his idea of freedom is fully an 8-year-old's idea and not an adult thinking what a child would do. Like, he doesn't think to himself, oh, I'm gonna go and spend money somewhere. Like, he finds his brother's stash eventually because he feels like he needs some cash, just in case. It's like $3.
Hey, he needs groceries.
He does, and this is the 90s where you actually could get some groceries for $3.
Yeah, I think they
with the coupon.
I think they say the total is like 20 something because someone posted a meme.
Nowadays, it's like $20. But
back then, back then he got like an entire cart full of groceries for $20.
He gets, yeah. I mean, they show him rolling up with a whole cartload, but at the end of the movie, he does say he only gets 3 things: toothpaste, I think milk or eggs, and then fabric softener. And there's a coupon for the fabric softener.
Yeah, he only says 3 things, but
he does roll up with a full cartload, and I think he might have just stolen that. But you know what? It's fine.
He pays for that one.
He does. He eventually becomes a good citizen.
Yeah.
But yeah, like his idea of like fun is just children activities, like watching adult movies, eating ice cream instead of real dinner, going sledding inside the house. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go out and like take a joyride. It's not like I'm gonna invite friends over. He's just chilling.
It's all the ideas that your parents would have 100% stopped you from. He feels very much like Calvin and Hobbes of some of their little sketches of like him trying to jump off the roof and
getting told no.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's also part of the charm is that Kevin is at his heart not a bad kid.
No.
He's just doing kid things.
Exactly. But this is also where the writing gets really good too, because we have this freedom, we have all this setup, and now we have the wrench in the gears that's gonna ruin Kevin's happiness, where we get the reveal of the wet bandits who are specifically seeking out Kevin's house, as they call it, the Silver Tuna, the G.
Which is such a Chicagoan phrase. I don't think anyone outside of like a very small group of us ever even thought about what that means.
I never noticed it until like rewatching it. I'm like, I have never heard anyone refer to like a score or a hit as the silver tuna.
Same. It is only a phrase that I eventually learned through Chicago-based, and specifically this one's movie. Like, this one definitely I hear it the best. And then, like, once you know about a couple of these phrases, they, like, turn back up occasionally. But yeah, this is such an odd, like, specific thing to include, but I love it because it also adds to the stupid quirkiness and duality of these two bad guys, right? We have the idiot who wants to name them the Wet Bandits, which is the worst name.
Yeah.
Versus a guy who's using, like, kind of cool and smart slang. He definitely sees himself as, like, the smart, like, leader of the group.
Yeah, they're a misfit of bandits. I mean, Wet Bandit sounds like some Japanese ripoff superhero, but
it sure does.
But Daniel Stern, who played Marv, described them as like the Three Stooges, which I guess now I'm gonna have to add to my list because this is like the 5th movie we've talked about in like 2 months.
Yeah.
That we've had to bring up the Three Stooges for some reason or another.
And granted, there are a couple of... I think the Three Stooges are just honestly the easiest of the stand-up slapstick humor. They're definitely the core. They have the easiest reach, and like they had the longest lasting setup. There was a handful of 2-man acts where I could definitely see, like, if someone really wanted to film nerd out on me, being like, oh no, they're not the Three Stooges, it's this other group. I think there was a pair of brothers, I can't remember their first name, M something.
Well, you do see the two-man act in, like, White Christmas or Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, and the Three Stooges took it from a 2-man act to a 3-man act, and the rule of 3 works well. It added that second middle ground character who was not too stupid that he wasn't talking, but he wasn't the smart one either. He could ask some stupid questions. There could be some play off that.
Look at anime. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura.
Oh, the 3 idiots, really.
Ichigo, Chat. Well, actually, Bleach has 4.
Bleach has a lot of idiots.
Well, it has like a group of 4,
That's
but
true.
Like Jujutsu Kaisen,
yeah,
Demon Slayer, like there's all those groupings of 3s.
Yeah, the Great Comedy itself anime, honestly, that makes sense. But
yeah, Gintama,
the ultimate group of 3, the original Stooges, really. But no, eventually you will have to, from an educational standpoint, dive in. I wouldn't just watch the like, oh, I'm just gonna watch the Three Stooges movie for fun. I would educational approach it for you because I don't think you're gonna like it.
No, I already know because like. Well, actually, thinking about Abbott and Costello, I watched a bunch of their monster ones and they were fine. But
yeah, no, it is similar in theming to Abbott and Costello in many ways. I think the specifics where they can compare the Stooges to these 2 idiots is clear in the way that the physical humor is done. These are stunts where other ones it's very cartoonish, right? Like you get the extra sound effects. It's clear that there's like a mat or something that they're falling onto. And granted, I know that part of that was just like the time, but also it added like a clown-esque to it, right?
Yeah. Well,
this one and the Three Stooges, they were doing stunts that would have killed normal people.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
The fact that no one got hurt in this movie is a miracle.
Yeah.
There's so many dangerous stunts, and they did like half of them with no support system in place.
Or they did some very good practical effects with this movie.
They also did a lot of very smart cuts.
Yes. Also, I do love that they're a mismatch. I do kind of wonder how they came together. I feel like they're just like friends who have they grew up together and now they're robbing together.
100%. Because like even in the second one, they bust out of jail together to then go rob places together.
Yeah.
Like, are they cousins? Are they family? That would make sense. It's Chicago. It's like, that fits the vibe.
I would think so, but like,
they're such perfect idiots.
But like, Harry is focused on material goods in the money sense and like what he can actually make with it.
Definitely.
Marv just wants toys.
Yeah, Marv is child-esque.
Yeah.
And that's why he like embodies that, that 2-man act so well, is that's kind of the whole running gag, is one is childlike and stupid, and the other one wants to be seen as like serious and like the straight man, but he's also stupid, just in a different way.
Well, that's the thing, is Harry's not stupid. Harry just gets too focused on his goal.
Yeah.
And revenge.
Oh, the revenge plot here is why the second one works at all.
Oh yeah, but I do like the little touches of festivity with them too, where they're snow globes on their dashboard, but they're all on Marv's side.
Yes. Yes, and I also love that while they are robbing other places, they are even taking Christmas decorations, for festive sake.
But we also have real life hitting Kevin really hard.
Yes, poor Kevin.
Which, I do like this because we had that little bit of freedom, and now, pairing with the reality of the bandits are coming for him.
Yes, that's
he also realized, hey, maybe being alone isn't the greatest.
And also, I love that the reoccurring, little detail of the gold tooth shining, which is a little cheesy, but it reiterates why Kevin would even have this extra level of fear, is because he now knows for certain that cop wasn't a real cop.
Doesn't yet. He saw
but we're getting
there. But also, I love this one bit rewatching it, when the family becomes just your stereotypical American and steal the phone from some random French woman.
It doesn't even wait, and then what do they get for calling? Nothing.
Because the phone lines are down, because the mom ignored one single line that was told her.
And then when they do finally get a hold of the police to have him stop by the house, that doesn't do anything either, because he just bangs on the door, and he's like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like anyone's home. Guess it's good enough.
Yeah. No, exactly.
No direction to check any other place other than knock on the front door. Which, I mean, granted, that's realistic. Don't get me wrong. But it's one of those things where, there's no neighbors to call. There's nothing left to do but physically go back out.
No, exactly. And also, I do appreciate that Kevin's... I mean, originally he's scared, because when they go to, when the wet bandits come to the back door, he turns the lights on. Very smart thinking on his part.
Yes, very clever kid.
I do love that he has that moment of, I'm going to protect my house, and he's still afraid of the shovel man when he goes out to be like, you hear me? I'm not afraid anymore.
Except for my neighbor, who probably could help me.
Yeah, and then when the actual cops do show up, it's that very good, because this happens, this has to happen, and because that has to happen, this has to happen. The cops show up and the reason Kevin doesn't answer the door is because we've had all the bandits show up and everything else.
Yep. No, it all makes sense. It all ties together in such a good kid logic way that even an adult can like get hooked on.
Yeah. And to be fair, the cops technically tried, and
technically they did exactly what they were asked to do, and you should be lucky they showed up. Because I know a lot of the times you call and nothing happens.
And we get the very well timelined 2-day time limit of when the mom's going to be able to get back, how long Kevin has to survive. All this happens in 3 days.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic time frame too. Because again, this is the 90s. And so granted, I know timeline for when an 8-year-old can be home alone without like people really panicking has changed over the years. But in the 90s, 2 days, a long time, definitely worrying. But if you have microwave food, he's probably okay.
He picks up the microwave food.
I know he does, but like the 90s, like the survivability rate is a little higher.
I don't know.
And it shouldn't be. I'm granted. It should all be the same. But like a lot of children were left home alone in the 90s.
And 80s, the latchkey generation.
Yeah, and so like that generation is now raising 90 children. So like, we don't want you to be home alone. But if you are home alone, you know how to work the microwave. Yeah. Don't burn the house down.
Also, there's little subtleties in rewatching this as an adult of Kevin being more mature now.
Yes, he's finally taking like problems seriously.
Well, he's going out shopping, and the reason he's shopping is he's getting a toothbrush because
his was packed.
His was packed, and he doesn't have one. So that's his first step. Is like, hey, I'm going to take care of myself, and it shows that level of maturity. But I do like the scene because they do a great job of making this old man creepy.
Yeah,
where just every time they introduce him from this point on. Up until the church, it's always boots first, and then you get up to him, and then even on top of that, his bandaged hand, and then just staring Kevin down for some reason.
He's got that piercing old man stare, and then I also love the little details to Kevin's character that really solidify him as like a little bit quirky of an 8-year-old. Because he spends extra time asking for a certified toothbrush, which would have been a new thing in the 90s. I know we had classes here where like someone would come in and be like, now remember, this is how you're supposed to brush. Do you want to eat the tablet and try to brush it away? Ooh, it's difficult.
I have those.
Yeah, and so, like, the 90s was, like, prime time for children to be like, I guess I will ask for a good toothbrush, but also, like, this is Kevin being extra annoying because it's Kevin.
Oh, yeah. And he is technically a criminal at that point, but
he has stolen a toothbrush.
And because he's walking, it puts him in line with the dipshit water bandits, who we see why they're called the wet bandits now, because they add property damage to injury.
Yeah, and, you know, the worst kind of property damage, too. Flooding.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, too, is, like, as silly as Marv is, Harry doesn't stop him. Like, Harry could go back and turn the water
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Which really leads me down the idea of, like, they have to be related somehow, like brothers almost.
Yeah, Marv has that really funny, like, comic book style of banditry of, like, ooh, I gotta leave my calling card. Like, he's some great burglar.
Yes, and I think Marv would really like to just burgle stuff.
No, exactly.
And then go sell it at the pawn shop.
Yeah, but this is where it puts them into conflict, as they almost hit Kevin with their car, but Kevin recognizes him because of his tooth.
The shiny tooth.
Yep. And this is also where we get the setup of him having to run away and not show them where he lives.
Yep.
But setting up the church as, like, this kind of center of sanctuary for Kevin potentially down the line. And
I love the level of creepiness, too, that they've added, right? Because the church is lit darkly.
Oh, this is daytime now.
But it's still like that. Like, it's not a full saturation of color.
It's a heavy stone.
It's heavy. It's got Christmas decorations, but they don't feel bright and cheerful decorations. They feel like solemn reminder decorations.
It feels like Christmas time. It feels like a Christmas church during the day when it's not magical. Christmas is never magical during the day. It's always magical at night.
The lights do help a lot, but, like, there's not even, like, tinsel or bow or anything like that anywhere because it's a church.
It's just a basic nativity scene.
Yeah, and I think it adds that level of, like, it doesn't add a level of comfort, right? Because if it was comforting and bright during the daytime, the argument could be made for Kevin to just hang out at the church until the wet bandits pass. Or until his mom gets home or something. But it doesn't feel inviting. It doesn't feel like a refuge. It just feels like a somewhat safe place.
Yeah, he doesn't go there or bother to tell anyone that, hey, I'm alone.
Yeah, like, hey, can anyone call my mom in Paris for me?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't even come across Kevin's mind.
Nope, which still shows his childishness that he thinks he can do it all on his own. Well, he knows he can do it all on his own.
Exactly.
But now he knows who was there the night before, and we get the line, when those guys come back, I'll be ready.
A good line.
Which, honestly, his ingenuity as a kid is the cool part of this movie, is he sets up this whole, like, very fun, like, kind of semi-party of, like, if you sat there and watched for, like, 5 minutes,
you would notice that it's fake.
Yeah.
But it is so smart and, like, clever in the way that he's rigged so many human-shaped people that, like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of impressed they have this many humanoid people to, like, mess with. Like, the cardboard cutout on the train, solid choice. He's got his mom's mannequins dressed up in set of places.
Michael Jordan.
You're running around. Yeah, like, it all works, but at the same time, like, I don't know if ever in my life, and my mom was a seamstress, if we've ever had that many human-shaped things in the house.
In the basement.
I guess.
But yeah, it's a fun little bit, and we get a little cut back to France of the family trying to enjoy it, and of course the French Christmas has that shitty white frou-frou looking tree.
Yeah, but it's kind of fun because it's so different than the house that they were in, so it feels very, like, exotic in that fun Christmas vacation way.
And then we cut back for the little pizza moment, which this is the fun moment so with the Angel's Dirty Faces, where he still gets paid, but he messes with the pizza boy. Like, the pizza boy deserved that.
Also, like, it's such a kid on defense, like, style thing to do, as opposed to leaving money on the mat, which, this is the 90s. Leaving money on the mat and having a sign up be like, put pizza on the back step, money's back there, be home later. Totally normal. No pizza delivery man would have blinked twice. And so, like, he didn't need to threaten him with a movie he could have just left the money there.
Yeah.
But instead, he's a kid on the defense, and this is how he's going to test his theories.
Well, he can't let the pizza guy know he's home alone.
Yeah, because heaven forbid the pizza man do anything about it.
Well,
but he's an 8-year-old kid.
And also, he plays a mafia movie, like, if the pizza boy really believed this, that he was getting shot at, why didn't he call the cops of, like, someone in this house tried shooting at me?
Yeah, does this pizza delivery kid deliver to, like, a lot of... because this is, like, a really nice neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Does this pizza guy also do, like, the other side of town and is kind of used to this? Or, like, he just doesn't know what to do? His phone line also down? What is happening?
Well, phone lines are soon to be back up.
This is true.
But I do like when we cut back to France, that the mom is really hustling to get seats.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's setting her back into motion of, we're getting this buildup of the bandits still keep trying to come, but now we have to really get the mom back, trying to get back into it, because we can't stay in Paris much longer than this.
Yep.
And also, it just shows, it's a nice little moment, too, because this is the part where we really have her feeling more sympathetic as a mom, of, like, she's trying the best anything she can do to get back home. And then on top of that, paired with Kevin regretting his life choices of, I wish I didn't wish my family away.
And, like, the acting here from both Kevin and from her is so good. It's very compelling, and, like, how desperate she feels, how panicked she looks. And then Kevin finally looking so remorseful of, like, yeah, shouldn't have done that. I do, in fact, love my family, even though they are jerks.
Yeah. And he still plays the adult. This is where he goes shopping, acting like a man with a mortgage and 3 kids.
Good for Kevin.
Which I wonder if he's imitating his dad a little bit, because it does feel like he's watched his dad go shopping, and just the couple little interactions we've had with his dad.
I do think that that's probably what's happening, because he also tries to do laundry like how he's seen his parents do it.
Yeah.
Because he definitely doesn't do laundry. His cousin and his brother talk about how he's babied terribly.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, he ain't afraid of the furnace no more. He's acting like a full-on 9-year-old now.
I'm so proud of Kevin.
Yeah. I also like the reuse of the TV again for the Wet Bandits being bamboozled. Not the Wet Bandits, but Marv.
Yeah.
So, some dude just got shot up.
And, like, doesn't even consider the fact that that's weird. Again, like, the pizza guy, I kind of give it to him, because, like, I'm sure the pizza guy runs into some weird people delivering pizza. These are the Wet Bandits, and he just is worried that some guy got shot up in this very expensive, nice house.
Yeah.
Well, like, someone beat you guys to the job in this Chicago neighborhood.
Yeah, and
really?
And Harry's just sitting there of, like, I recognize that from somewhere. Like, it's showing their level of intelligence that Harry is maybe a little bit more cultured, and who knows what Marv's doing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, one of them's watching a lot of TV.
Mm-hmm. We got the mom's journey, funny little bits of her frustration in Scranton with them not having a flight back for her, which I get feels very plane, trains, and automobiles, but
it works so well.
It works so well because, I think it's maybe because John Candy reuses some of these elements.
Yeah.
Because the person who comes to her aid is the amazing, the one, the only, John Candy, Polka King of the 70s.
I love him. He is by far my favorite character in this movie.
Actual name, Gus Polinski.
Thank you. So, John Candy had only 23 hours to film all of his bits.
Yep.
He was paid $414, according to a later interview. They say in the interview $500. They think they found the receipt. It wasn't even $500 for this. And because he was such a good sport, most of his lines are fully his own. He improv'd so much of this.
Yeah,
which is great because it's John Candy. How can you not let the man improv all of this? He's so good.
Yeah, no, he is.
He's so funny.
Yeah, he is amazing. And if anyone out there hasn't seen Uncle Buck or didn't watch it until like 2 years ago, like me,
it's so good.
That is probably my favorite John. I love Home Alone, but Uncle Buck is where it is at and what I aspire to be as an uncle.
And honestly, John Candy, I've seen a lot of movies, granted not all of them. I've seen a lot of John Candy, and every time he's in a movie, I'm having a fun time. Mm-hmm. He is always funny, he is always really good. Even his more serious roles, he does a fantastic job. I am so sad that he is no longer acting, because he's dead,
Sadly.
The thing that really, I think, drives this character home, our Polka King home, for me, is like we talked about earlier. 2 other characters have tried to console her on that she is not a terrible mother, that sometimes these things happen. This is a big thing, but it's not the end of the world. He'll be okay. Is John Candy's character explaining that he left his own son in a funeral home with a dead guy for a whole day. And that he's fine now. It took 6 months, but he's fine now.
Yeah, well,
which is so funny, but also, like, what a great bonding way. That's the first thing that truly made her feel a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, yeah, some parents, we mess up, we try our best, but yeah, sometimes you leave them in a funeral home.
We get some parallels, the comfort from a stranger's words, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that sort of, like, a stranger helping you, but in, like, such a big, impactful way, is another big trope for Christmas movies. And, like, this movie didn't have to have that. They very easily could have just had her hitch a ride with them, and it would have, I mean, story-wise, it would have been the same, right?
Yeah. It just would have put her in that way, but it wouldn't have given that emotional.
And, like, that level of Christmas kindness, which, granted, is not the main theme of the movie, right? Like, family and the, like, love for each other, that is definitely the main theme of Home Alone. But that little extra steps of adding other Christmas elements into the movie, like having the stranger being that almost Santa Claus help, is such a big part of, like, the layers that makes this movie, like, a withstanding movie, as opposed to just, like, a light, fun one. Like, it adds that depth.
Yeah, no, exactly. But the Wet Bandits realize that it's all a play as Kevin's setting up the place for Christmas.
I love that he drags out he goes and chops off the top of a tree with a hacksaw.
Yeah, and also Kevin knowing that the bandits know now through the ornament is a nice little touch.
And I love this, like, it shows again that Kevin's a smart kid. Like, he calls out, "Dad, can you help me with this?" But he also knows he's been got.
Mm-hmm.
But that is such a smart way of handling that, like, proving that Kevin is smart. He can think his way out of a situation.
He's not turning around to see the dude looking in on him.
Exactly, which honestly, how freaking I would have peed my pants if there was a man creeping in on the window during Christmas. I'm home alone as 8-year-old. Would have died immediately, just passed out. We
also get the line, "He's home alone."
Yeah.
And it's specifically, "Mom, where are you?" He doesn't ask for his dad.
Oh, yeah, Mom.
Because the mom's a comforting one.
Yeah.
But it's a nice way of leading back to that he still needs his mom at some point or another.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I also... I think part of the reason why Home Alone still stands out so well is because it goes between the levels of maturity of Kevin pretending to be mature and actually kind of being mature to his childishness, because the next safe person for him to go to is Santa Claus.
Yes, which I get it. I mean, especially because he's clearly has Christmas on the brain, right? It's not just that he's home alone and it's summertime and they all left for Disney World, which honestly might be the 7th movie that might come out eventually.
That actually would have been a good third Home Alone. Yeah, if instead of
different
making
holidays.
Yeah, actually,
that would have been good. But alas, they're all Christmas films as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, but it does show that with his maturity that he wants his family back.
Yes.
But can you imagine being the Santa and some kid just dumps all this stuff on you as you're trying to go home and drink?
And I love the director's logicking this away too, because even when this first came out, granted there's a lot more people who've pulled this movie apart in recent years, but even when this first came out, that was a big one that people like complained about, was like, oh, you don't want to show Santa like that ruins the magic for kids. And I love the director's logic here. He's like, no, Kevin's clearly like my kids. We explain very clearly that not Santa in real life, it's Santa's helper, and he's standing in for Santa because Santa is very busy right now making toys. And Kevin kind of says a few lines like that.
Yes.
And I love that the director stands so firmly in that belief that oh, Kevin's not bothered by seeing Santa smoking and with his beard pulled down, because he knows it's okay. He just would like him to get that message to the big man later tonight when he meets up with him for his 11 o'clock meeting.
Exactly. But also to really nail in that loneliness, they have Kevin walk sadly by other families enjoying the holidays together.
And not just any other families. Half of the people in the background during this are the director's, like, family members. That he's just like, yeah, that one's my brother-in-law, that's my nephew back there, there's, a cousin over there, that's my driver over there, like...
Hey, you gotta get people in there for cheap. They're already on the payroll, so...
apparently his brother-in-law, like, loves doing this his father-in-law loves doing this so much that he's, like, a regular in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Made a career out of it.
No, my parents are like, if you ever write a movie, we want to be extras in it. Like, just...
Somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in the background. I'm like, sure.
You put him in a picture frame on the wall.
Fun trivia about the Santa Claus scene.
Uh-huh.
The car actually stalled and they just kind of went with it, which good on them for instead of, like, calling cut, and good on the guy who played Santa to just be like, I'm just gonna roll with this.
And it is one of 3 cuss words in the whole movie.
Yeah.
I believe the Wet Bandits each say hell, which counted as a cuss at the time.
I know.
And then this guy gives a quick little shit.
Yeah, it's...
Fantastic timing.
I mean, it works. It's one of those things where, like, if you're watching it with kids, they're like, ooh, he said a bad word. But
it's so quick, though, that, like... And, like, the hell ones both feel appropriate, because I believe they are said after someone is smashed in, to some extent, so, like, yeah. But I feel like with that amount of physical damage, you get 1 hell a piece.
Just a bit.
And then the Santa one, like, I think they even cut it short a little bit. They, like, cut away from him, like, mid-shit. So it works even better, because it's, like, the timing of it is, there's not enough time for McCulkin to have, like, turned around and reacted to it. Mm-hmm. He's just sad, gloves hanging by strings off his arms, sauntering back home. Don't give enough time for Santa to even get out of the car and, like, try and pop the hood open.
Nope.
Just cuts real harsh, and I love it.
It's a great moment. And we even get another great moment that kind of mirrors the candies bit, where it's back to the church where, the creepy old man is actually a sweet, lonely old man.
His granddaughter sings in the church choir, and I love that the director at this part goes, and this is the part where you thought I was going to hook them together up, didn't you? And I'm not going to lie, he called me out, because as I grew older, I was like, yeah, it does kind of feel like the grandpa's like, isn't the redheaded one cute?
Yeah.
You guys want to go to the movies?
But
it's not what's happening.
No, that's how all grandparents and parents are, is like,
no, 100%.
I totally did that with my brother and one of my other friend's sisters.
The amount of times my grandparents have tried to get my best friend to date some random kid they had come over mow their yard.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah.
But it's a interesting thing to see in how Hughes works in what could have been a really nothing character into a nothing and some antagonistic, not like fully, he's just kind of creepy for a bit.
He's a very visual representation of, like, Kevin's growth here. Because he's so scared at the beginning of the movie. And then as he gets more brave and realizes he has to be brave, right? Because the Wet Bandits are coming.
Well, there's a couple things with that, too. So, one, he ends up being the person that Kevin needs twice in this movie.
Yeah.
And he also has a story that parallels Kevin's of he had a falling out with his family, but he never. It's kind of like the Ghost of Christmas Future. That's exactly what it is, where he's a potential of what Kevin could have theoretically became if he never made up with his family. You know?
You gotta wish those parents back, Kevin, or you're gonna end up like this sad old man can't say hi to his granddaughter on Christmas.
Yeah, but it's also a growth moment for him, for the old man as well, because he's like Kevin tells him, you're never too old to be afraid.
Yeah, and it's a good lesson too.
Yeah, and it's a nice little bringing together of two people who need each other, kind of like how, in a lesser way, Kevin's mom needed
Polka King. Yeah.
But also, I do appreciate in the way that Kevin talks about a school it seems really rough of, you can't wear a Big Bird sweater.
Yeah, man, that sucks, Kevin, because I can't empathize though, man. I went to a private school where you really couldn't have worn a Big Bird sweater. We had a uniform, man. Like, yeah. Get them khakis out, kid.
But now it's time to take action at home where he belongs.
And it is time for the most pivotal, most important part of the Home Alone franchise to occur.
the traps.
The booby traps are so good. And I know there are later booby traps in later Home Alones that get more creative and more, like, Impossible Machine-esque, right?
Mm-hmm.
These ones are my favorite because they are so simple.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what makes it work is they don't try to be too elaborate. It's just the most basic thing that a kid can think of like stepping on a nail, although I will say the iron through the vent is a little over the top, and also getting electrocuted.
Yeah, and the flamethrower.
Yes, although...
But, so, getting them set up, I would argue, is the part that's over the top. If you just asked a kid what would hurt, I'm sure these answers would have all eventually made it there. Mm-hmm. It's the actual physical setting it up that is really Kevin's true calling in life, and I hope he becomes something of an inventor.
Yeah, and also, like, I love that he set up a map of his house of where to put everything. It's such a so childish thing to do.
But also, apparently, that was, like, one of the homeworks they gave Mac, where they were like, please sit off to the side and stop bothering people. I know, why don't you make a map of the house? And so he did, and he was very proud of it, and he's glad it's in the movie, even to this day.
It works so well.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's some of the better... And I think that's what makes it great, though, is they feel believable, even though there's been plenty of channels that have proven they would have died multiple times.
And also, some of these traps would not have worked just based off of how, like, mechanics work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, because they're fun.
No, but I also like that because of their budget, they had to do things on, like, and that's probably why they're so simple. But the fire to his head, that's done with mirrors.
Which is so smart.
And it looks so well done, too. Like,
and a bunch of the, like, falling scenes, a lot of the ice scenes, those are stuntmen doing a fantastic job not killing themselves.
Yeah. And I still have a soft spot for, like, the micro machines he steps on, too.
I do, too.
The one scene that I understand of, like, you're surprised no one got hurt with.
Yeah.
The scene of the iron falling to Marv.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's a 300-pound camera that they just had to a wire. And they're like, it'll be fine, and they just dropped it at him.
It's so risky. No, the one that honestly does blow my mind is they had fake feet for the tall idiot to run around it. And, like, when you see them, you can't unsee them because they're gigantic to fit over his actual feet. But then when he gets inside, he doesn't need them anymore. And he decided on his own accord that he would step on those ornaments. Granted, they're candy. They're not, like, actual glass. I have worked with candy. I have made many a fake candy glass thing. Candy freaking hurts to step on. Even if you manage to get it very thin, it is still ability to stab you.
It's like the Lego of food.
It really is like the sharp, pointy Lego of food. And so his willingness to step on it and then not even, like, to finish the bit of keep walking, because that's how stupid he is. He wouldn't, like, get down and, like, crawl away or, like, try and brush after he's already stepped on one. He doesn't, like, try and, like, move more of them away. He just keeps stepping on them. Ouch! Yeah. How did nobody's feet get torn up?
You know, I'm sure he had some abrasion or something.
According to everyone, and I, like, went through some of even the later, like, interviews with people talking back on this. According to the interviews, the only sustainable injury that anyone reported for this movie is Macaulay Culkin himself, who unfortunately accidentally got bitten a little bit harder than they thought during the, like, he's gonna bite his finger off scene.
By Joe
and has,
Pesci.
like, a tiny little scar. And he's like, I'm not mad at him. It didn't hurt that bad. It's just, like, it's weird it did scar.
Yeah, which that was brought up on the the conversation of actors who were upset that they were starring next to a child.
Yeah, but, like, I mean, it did work out for him, didn't it?
Yeah.
And, like, in his much later interviews when they talk about it, he does remember it kind of fondly. He's like, yeah, I mean, it was a silly movie. I enjoyed getting to be goofy. It just was at that point in my career where I thought I was done being goofy.
Yeah, he had done Goodfellas and now he was
doing this. And so, like, I get it, like, in the moment at the time. And then, like, looking back on it, I think he has appreciated being in at least the first one. The second one, they don't talk about us favorably, and I totally understand.
I haven't done any research on the second one.
There's not a lot of hard evidence. There's just a couple of mentions in some interviews. I think they would like that one to be forgotten. But yeah, according to pretty much everyone I can find, that is the only, like, lasting injury, was that little tiny finger scar, which is super impressive, especially knowing that, like, half of the stunts was done by, like, Kevin's stuntman, and he's going at it with no safety harness or anything. He's just like, no, I got this, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, apparently he got run over, and, like, on accident on, like, set or something, and they're like, are you good? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. He, like, cracked his head on the windshield. He's like, no, give me 5 minutes, and I'll be right back.
Yep.
But is that stuntman just stuntmanning it? Probably. I'm sure someone, sprained something at least. My God.
Yeah. I also appreciate that Kevin has time to call the police in his adult voice.
Which does sound suspiciously like an actual adult Max voice.
Or like, why would the police believe this? Because it does also sound like a kid trying to be an adult.
It does 100% sound like that. And also, they've now had a frantic woman call the house saying that, like, her child is home alone. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how good the records are for the 90s, but that might have, like, flagged it too as, like, that kid that supposedly is home alone at that address. Sounds like him.
Yeah, maybe we should check more than once.
Also, like, I understand that she's in the back of a polka van and she can't call. The rest of the family's just chilling at the airport or in Paris. They can't call? They can't try calling the house more? They can't try calling the police and be like, hey, did you check on my kid?
It's the 90s. Do you know how expensive that would have been?
That's true. That would have been very expensive.
Yeah.
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 They don't know anyone else in the United States to call and be like, hey, can you call from in-state?
They did. They tried calling the neighbors, not knowing that the neighbors were in Florida, and that's what sent the wet bandits back to the house.
That's the only other person in the USA that they could call. Granted, I understand you want to call the neighbors first because they're right next door. They could easily go get Kevin. But now you can't make that one $5 phone call to, like, the grandmother who couldn't fly and be like, hey, honey, can you sit by the phone and call the cops for Kevin?
Maybe the grandparents are dead and the only people that they know in the family are all in Paris except
he doesn't
for
have
the
a
mom.
coworker he could call? Nobody?
Maybe
this is everyone they know?
Maybe he doesn't know his coworkers that well enough.
Also, I forget, this is the 90s. He would have had to memorize that phone number.
Yes.
Okay.
Or bring his phone book with him.
That also happened a lot, though, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Suspicion.
But I also like that they bring back the tarantula for a little bit.
Which was a live and real tarantula, who was willingly placed on his face. Good for him.
Yeah. He had to fake the scream to not startle it.
I love how very delicate they were with this spider tarantula actor. They were like, everyone, spider actor is on set, please be kind.
Because we've got PETA.
Well, a little bit. It was more about, like, they were trying to actually be nice to the actors themselves, and also they didn't want anyone to get hurt by the tarantula. Yeah. Because they do have little tiny hairs. Those are very irritating, especially on your face.
They can still bite.
They can. That would also suck. Don't want to do that. Yeah. But as far as the stuntmen, oh, yeah, you're getting punched in the gut. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. But I also appreciate that even though Kevin is very much taking control of everything, there still has that little moment of afraid to take the leap across. Which
I'm so impressed that this zipline exists and also functions. Yeah. This is the most impressive engineering an 8-year-old has ever done.
And he put all this together in what, like 2 hours maybe?
And he had time to have some mac and cheese with a glass of milk. And set the Christmas table.
Microwave dinner.
And set the Christmas table.
Yep.
Because he's got little candles burning and everything. Mm-hmm. And those are special Christmas candles. He had to dig those out of the attic. Yeah. Dang, Kevin.
It's also, we get a little bit of, like, that darkness from, like, 90s movies that I don't think we'd see nowadays, where Marv says, maybe he committed suicide. It's like, I did not remember that line, Marv, but okay.
Yeah, no, and, like, the tension builds in such a nice way of, like, we're having fun with the comedy of it all, right? But then as the shenanigans keep happening, the director talks regularly about how the reason he thinks the comedy in this movie works is because it's very hard-hitting slapstick. Mm-hmm. Like, these are very serious injuries these guys should be sustaining. Yeah. And that's why the comedy works. And I agree with him, because not only does that why the comedy works, it builds a tension and suspense of they're adults taking these hits, and they're okay. But if they get Kevin, and they, like, that's a big reason for revenge. These are not little, like, pokes. This is serious.
It's like running into Mr. X in Resident Evil, where you can't do anything to him for a long time.
Yeah, like, it helps build that infuriation of how annoying it would be to be the wet bandits.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing is Kevin does go over to the neighbor's house, and that's where he gets cornered because the bandits obviously know, hey, he's going to try and go through this way and loop back around.
I am impressed that they thought that quickly, because this is the only time I think the wet bandits truly have any thought whatsoever.
Marv's got a lot of... Not Marv. Harry's got a lot of thoughts.
Harry does have several thoughts. I mean, he's not very hairy anymore. Did burn all that off.
Yeah.
Aha! Which apparently the director has the bald cap from this, the burned scalp, somewhere in his office, and he's like, yeah, you don't leave it out, but it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have props like that and whatnot.
Yeah, seriously, that's cool.
We also get the return of the old man again through the boot, so we know that he's back, but this time it's not. That's the great thing about having that compassionate scene in between. It's not a scary scene.
Yep.
It's a hopeful, like, oh shit, now the old man's here to help them.
And he knocks him out with his shovel.
Which was totally done by a 14-year-old. But
and you can really tell when someone says it.
Also, when did this old man see any of this happening? Because he just kind of shows up like a Deus Ex Machina.
He really does. I'm guessing that it's like he went out to go shovel the drive and probably went to go check on Kevin, because it's probably... I mean, it's winter, and it's Chicago, so it gets dark very early. It's probably like 7.
And he maybe knows the other neighbors well enough, too.
Yeah, so he's... I mean, I can definitely see, like, he's now hunting for Kevin. Like, the choir practice ended. Honestly, he might have just gotten back from that choir practice. Those suckers can last a while.
Yeah, fair.
Especially for the Christmas performance.
Yeah, well, it's not... I don't think it's even a practice. It's like the actual Christmas show.
Oh, yeah, it might be. Yeah.
No, it's the practice because he's not supposed to be there, and the parents aren't there, so parents drop the girl off for the choir.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate that when the cops are carrying them out, it's like, he's like, we're the wet bandits, and like, oh, well, now we know exactly where everywhere else you've hit now.
And I love how Marv starts spelling it for them like they can't spell wet bandits.
Marv's just an idiot.
I love Marv. But this is the part where the revenge and hatred of Harry's disgust towards Kevin as he looks out that window, this scene burns so nicely into your brain that in 2 years when the second one comes out, it feels appropriate to have a second one.
Yeah, that devious little smile that Kevin's got as he waves to them.
And the burning knowledge that they are now bitter enemies. Like, Harry will spend the rest of his life hating a child. Is honestly the whole reason why I think any of us were willing to see the second one.
This just makes me think of... I got a buddy who... We just give him so much shit because he was just telling us one day he got banned on Xbox Live because he was arguing with some children.
My God. Yeah, I mean, him and Harry both.
Yeah. But what's great about this scene, too, is as things are calming down, we've hit that action climax. We still have to hit that emotional climax.
Yep.
Kevin is still a kid leaving out milk and cookies.
He's got the carrots out for the reindeer, too.
Yep. On top of that, he cleaned up all that mess.
Which, okay, so this is, the director brings up a really good point that I hadn't even thought about. Do you believe that Kevin ever tells his parents? Because he cleans up all of this, and it's not a little bit. He must have cleaned up the tar off the stairs and stuff, too.
Yeah, well, because the only thing that's left is the golden tooth.
The golden tooth is the only thing that he doesn't clean up, and then Buzz's room. But Buzz's room, him forgetting about, honestly makes sense, because that wasn't part of the shenanigans.
Yeah.
He broke that, like, at the beginning of the movie.
It was
when
the first day. Money.
The first day, he messed up his room.
Second movie this year we've talked about with kids breaking shelves.
This is true. It was a fairly common theme. And also apparently a very dangerous stunt, so...
Yeah.
That makes sense. But yeah, like, the fact that he forgets Buzz's room, but manages to clean up the rest of the house. Kevin is an incredibly hardworking child. Maybe it's time for Kevin to start doing his own chores and stop being babied so much.
Or maybe Kevin just needs guidance or needs an outlet for him to do this, and apparently setting booby traps, which is actually technically illegal in the U.S.
Well, okay, so intending to capture people with the booby trap is the illegal part. Having the booby trap is not technically illegal. But if you intend it for people, then it's illegal.
Which is what
Kevin's doing.
Yeah.
No, Kevin would be 100% going to jail.
Yeah. And then this is the part where we get these things happen with the polka band, which,
and
good moment.
Yeah, so cute.
And then Christmas morning and wishes come true. The whole will she, won't she arrive, and I do appreciate that when she comes in, the house is decked, and all the family stockings are up. It's a small moment, like, before the family shows up, that she and Kevin get to have
just the two of them,
just together. Like, they're like, hey, we're sorry we said all those things to each other, basically.
Yeah.
And this would be like, if this was a traditional, like, Christmas rom-com, this is that will they, won't they moment.
Oh, for sure. And then the best part of the movie, which Macaulay Culkin apparently spent years of his life thinking about, is not even 4 seconds later, the rest of the family enters the house. And he has spent so long in his life apparently contemplating if she just should have stayed in Paris and rested with everyone else. Because clearly she didn't get back that much faster.
Because it wouldn't be the same movie then. Because you wouldn't have had that. You wouldn't have that care for them. Yeah, exactly. Or that emotional swell to, hey, she's trying to get home for the holidays, and hey, Kevin is wanting her to get back. Instead of, like, because she has to have, even though her journey is very small in this one, it's necessary to have that emotional build at the end.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's just like, where were you? Oh, I was in Paris for 2 days.
Okay, but here's the part that I think a lot of people forget. I highly doubt that they were going to stay in Paris for 2 days.
No,
they were
weren't.
back on that Friday flight, which is, I think, the part people forget.
No, they were going to stay longer, but the next booking they had was
Friday.
Yeah.
The rest of the family could have stayed the whole vacation in Paris, not just like, oh, we'll wait for everyone to come back on Friday together.
Yeah.
Like, theoretically, Mom is now with Kevin. Everyone else could have stayed on this vacation that they probably prepaid for because it's the 90s.
Yeah, it's just that fun little bit of comedy at the end of, like, just like, hey, you could have waited.
But here's the thing that I think for me, especially now as an adult and having to think about and plan, like, vacations for myself and for my family, and, like, knowing how much work and effort goes into that, and knowing that they essentially are losing all of that time and money and effort to be home with Kevin, that feels really special to me as an adult, because it proves to me that, like, they are there for the whole family, even the ones who were the jerks to Kevin, even the weird uncle who, like, compared Kevin to leaving his reading glasses at home. They care enough to go all the way home from Paris just to be with Kevin.
Yeah,
that's really sweet.
Yeah, they want the whole family together. And,
yeah.
I mean, it also is his way to show that he's matured. He's like, you don't have to worry. I have milk. I have eggs. I've got the basics that we all need.
Which is very cute. Also, though, like, those are the normal basics that I'm sure he's parroting from his dad going shopping or his mom making the shopping list. That is not enough food to feed the extra, 10 people in this house.
They'll just have to order
more pizza.
Little Neros, and hopefully Kevin actually gets his cheese pizza.
And also it's Christmas, which means everything is closed today.
Yeah.
So this family probably goes and eats Chinese immediately after this.
Yeah. But we also get the end of a little bit of humor with Buzz yelling Kevin's name. That becomes kind of the trademark of these movies.
And we get the nice little closure with the neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's such a sweet ending.
No, exactly. That's the thing, is, like, it all wraps up for every single person, and that's why the family comes home, is because they need them back to wrap them up.
Yes, and it's such a perfect ending.
Yeah, and we forgot to talk about the aftershave.
Oh,
manliness.
we did, which I love that the director talked about how, like, he was worried that people wouldn't take it seriously, because for those who do not remember the deodorant of past, that spray on deodorant burns, kind of. It's, like, very menthol-y.
No.
And so much like the face spray, a lot of people worried that, like, just him yelling about the face aftershave, especially since he didn't actually shave, like, wouldn't have been funny. But Macaulay Culkin sold it so well that it's now the main focus of the poster.
Yeah. I mean, it's an iconic scene.
It's so good. And him singing and only combing the front half of his head. The back is still a mess.
Yeah.
It's such a great, like, kid Home Alone moment.
Yeah, trying to be an adult, but not.
Yeah.
But, and honestly, I know we talked a little bit about the beginning that Columbus's goal was to make the movie timeless. And, I mean, yeah, we can point to the hairdos, the fashion, the lack of modern technology, but I think part of what, it's the core in the message of the movie that makes it timeless. and so rewatchable 34
Yes.
years later.
This is timeless in the same way that like White Christmas or Miracle on 34th Street are timeless. Yes, they clearly show what time period they're in, especially White Christmas. I mean, they reference the war directly. But like, even though it is very obvious that Home Alone is set in the 90s, like, you cannot argue it or doubt it. Like, those toys are so specific, the fashion, the way that, like, the loopholes would not have existed in even 10 years' time when cell phones started to become a thing. And, like, the internet, like, having a home computer, Kevin probably eventually could have just Googled his parents, like, a hotel that they were going to, because I'm sure that information was laying around.
Yeah.
So, like, just, even though it is so painstakingly of its time, it is timeless in its message, its music is so timeless, and it is so well written and enjoyable that it doesn't matter at all, like, the actual time period of it. And if anything, it makes it better, because the ones that I think truly are, like, trying to be an absolute, like, erasure of time are the ones that get boring.
Yeah.
Having those, like, set points in history are such a nice nostalgic look, and even if you don't remember the 90s or you don't have any nostalgic ties to it, it still has, like, enough bits to it that you can have that connection.
Mm-hmm. Well, and on top of it, it's also Columbus's approach to treating this movie not as a kid's movie despite having a child star, but instead of a movie for both kids and adults. Because Kevin, while annoying initially, he matures real quickly.
Yes, he does.
And it doesn't make it feel like he's a child star. It just makes it feel like he truly felt like a proper actor in it.
Yes. And I think a huge part of that, too, is the type of humor that they chose to go with.
Mm-hmm.
That really heavy, hard-hitting slapstick and physical humor balances out the annoying kidness that, like, you have to have, because Kevin is a kid, and if he's not annoying, he's not a kid. Yeah,
there's no jokes to the time frame or the eras that are going to fall out of place.
Exactly. And having that, like, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but slapstick humor is timeless. People getting hurt will always be funny to someone.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. I mean, hell, Fat Lip by Sum 41, we laugh when old people fall, but what would you expect with a conscience so small?
The reason that America Funny Home Videos still is on air today, despite the fact that we all have YouTube and TikTok and can watch people fall on their butts whenever we want, is because this sort of thing is hilarious.
Yeah, I follow an Instagram page called Kids Getting Hurt.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I watch one where people get regularly kicked in the balls.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And on top of that, the seriousness and thought that went into this movie means that going through it and taking it apart piece by piece, which for some of us is a crucial part of, like, enjoying a movie, this holds true. Mm-hmm. Granted, if you really took it apart, you'll notice that the wet bandit should be dead several times.
Yes.
But that's also part of the fun, is it's such a good discussion with either fun facts or with interesting, like, behind the scenes bit, because again, everyone who worked on this, even if they were bitter that they had a child star and they weren't on screen as much as they thought, eventually everyone did turn around and enjoy working on this. The stunt guys have some really good, like, behind the scenes bits, which we don't normally get to see. Granted, it's only available on some editions, and I think it's mostly the Blu-ray copy, and I wanted to talk about that for a second.
The Family Fun edition, which I specifically, like, there has to be special features on this. Like, this one is one of those ones where it's so classic. How is there not something else other than movie and interactive menus?
So, we have talked about many times my love of a DVD menu, right? Mm-hmm. It is something that, for me, is a big selling point on whether or not I will be buying the physical copy of media nowadays. I care less when it's a VHS tape, because I'm here for the commercials at the beginning that I get to choose to watch.
Yeah.
But it's a VHS tape, no big worries. This is both a holiday classic, a movie that by the time the special features have come around, now has made so much money. In fact, the year that this came out, this is, depending on which, like, sources you look at, either the most successful budgeted movie of the year, or the second most making money worldwide of the year. Yeah. This movie made enough for the DVD menu not to look like absolute dog shit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Jesus Christ. I could have made a better, Kevin himself could have made a better looking DVD menu in 90s word processor.
Yeah. Well, they had to pay a 22-year-old Culkin to return.
They did
for
have
the
to,
commentary.
which he did laugh about how every year that they tried to make a new one of these, his price went up, which is part of the reason why he thinks he wasn't invited back to the third one. That's not true. Nobody went back to the third one because we were done.
No.
But by the time the first one ended, we were in a 6-movie contract.
But that success that you're talking about, Columbus mentioned part of it was that Home Alone was in less theaters than Rocky at the time, and it was number 1 on the charts, so it created this unintentional limited experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, and on top of that, it wasn't in theaters all at once, so it was passed through word of mouth, and that everyone's like, oh, we have to go see this.
Mm-hmm.
So every single showing was sold out for weeks.
Yes. Oh, it hit top of charts for, like, I think 6 weeks straight due to that, which is very impressive, especially for a Christmas movie, because usually everyone sees them around the week or so of Christmas, and then we're done. We don't spend more money on it. This was not the case. The moment this went to home video, people bought it.
Yeah.
And they have continued to buy it pretty consistently. Usually we see a pretty big decline, and then if something becomes a cult classic, we can see a resurgence in its home sales.
Yeah.
Not the case for this movie. It has been consistent across the board in both showings, rescreenings, and DVD/VHS tape originally, like, sells, which is very impressive. So why is the DVD menu so garbage? I don't know. Not only does it look bad, it functions poorly.
Because it's modern DVDs and Blu-rays. They don't give a shit anymore. It's not Harry Potter where they had a whole interactive map and everything.
I don't need it to be Kung Pao level good. I just need it to visually not look like vomit. And also the menu scrolling is atrocious. At least show a different background image when I click on something.
Oh,
the
yeah.
pop-up thing drove me wild. I about lost it.
Oh, you'd hate so many of my DVDs.
Yeah, this is why I don't buy them.
Yeah.
The other fun fact about this is the legal trouble.
Ooh.
There was potentially going to be a suing around this movie, because the same year that this came out, the movie 3615 Code Père Noël, which is a French thriller, which,
Of course the French are going to try and sue.
Sorry, not the same year, 1 year before, that came out. The premise of that movie is that a child is left home. They said alone, but his grandpa, I've seen it, his grandpa's there. He's not home alone. So him and his not helpful grandpa are left home alone during Christmas when home invaders dressed as Santa Claus try and invade their home and ruin everything for them. However, the reason that it didn't work, they were originally going to sue for plagiarism was like their main underlying reasoning here. However, the movie, while it did come out in 1989, it was only released in France in 1989 and wouldn't make it to America until 2018.
Oh, you took an idea that you didn't even know was a thing. We will sue you.
And also, like, yes, the child is quote unquote home alone. Again, the grandpa is there. The only things they have is that there's home invasion during Christmas. And so, obviously, the legal worries were avoided because, again, no one in the US could even watch this movie until 2018. And
Nice.
Also, like, getting a hold of it was kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I mean, a lot of French movies are a pain in the butt to try and find still, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I think one of the things that stands out with this movie, too, is I went back through Culkin's filmography, and even though, like, I still have a special place in my heart for Page Master,
of course,
I still need to see The Good Son, which I've heard he's great in that,
yeah.
as well as My Girl.
Oh, yeah.
But nothing stands out as much as Home Alone. This is, like, his iconic movie. Even as an adult, he is the Home Alone kid.
And he knows it, and I love that he does play into it a little bit. I remember when he first launched his podcast along with everyone else in this world. But he had a special place in it because he talked about how, like, I know I'm the Home Alone guy, but I have been in Hollywood a long time, and I know some cool people, and I want you guys to hear me talk to cool people.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong. He has been in Hollywood a long time. It just so happens that he somehow managed to peak when he was 9 years old. Which, yeah. I mean, not a bad thing. That's, like, really impressive, but also, like, sorry, man.
Yeah.
Granted, I say peaked. I mean specifically in acting. He has gone on to do a lot of other stuff. Same with some of the other people in his family. I know his brother's gone on to be very successful.
Oh, yeah. He was William Wallace. Or
yeah.
not William Wallace. Wallace Wells in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Thank you. So, like, clearly, like, not out of the Hollywood and movie world,
Mhm.
just no longer the child star he once was.
Yeah. And one last little bit of trivia I do want to leave on a little depressing note for that.
Yeah.
While we aren't talking about Home Alone 3, I do think it's interesting and a little sad that it didn't happen because Hughes supposedly had a great idea for the third installment, and Columbus suggested shooting 2 and 3 back to back, but the studios never greenlit it or gave him the go-ahead to even write a spec script for it, so I'm assuming probably budget for the second one.
Definitely. Definitely, especially since, you know, all of the main actors did come back for 2, and then, of course, you know, some other very large guest stars appear in it. That eats up a lot of budget. But also, by the end of this one, he had signed a contract promising 6 Home Alones. We have met that 6 Home Alone mark. No fear. Theoretically, we are done with Home Alone. I think he is done with Home Alone.
Oh, I don't think Columbus went. Columbus only did the first 2, and
yes.
Hughes wrote the first 2, and then they weren't involved after that. It probably was like some studio executive, like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do 6.
Yeah. Unfortunately, people did sign away the rights to Home Alone to make 6 of them. It's not a full, like, oh, it's gone sort of thing, but, like, the promise had been made 6 of these suckers by the time this one had gone on to, like, actual DVD. I think the second one came out, and it was announced 6 in total were going to be part of this series.
Oh, yeah, it's
bold to assume by the second one that 6 was the number here, guys.
It's like James Cameron, like, I've got an idea for 6 Avatar movies.
Yeah, unlike him, though, they never planned on 6. This was kind of a studio, like, you will be making 6 of these.
Print me more money, please.
100%, which is why you see such drastic decline from 2 to 3 to 4 to 6.
Yeah. So, Chris, at the end of Home Alone, how do you rate it?
For me, this is just good. I know it has a few goofy moments, and I know there's some things that some people consider bad, like certain editing choices that were made, mostly editing done by apparently a guy in his mom's basement for a couple of bucks and some cheeseburgers. Good on him.
Specifically, the ghostly heads of his family around him.
And also, he hand-painted in the BB for that one shot. Very impressive.
Yep.
But for me, I don't think those bad moments or bad editing, even the spots where, like, now that I know that that's a stunt double and I can never unsee it, or I can never unsee the feet, the prosthetic feet, I don't care. I don't think it's bad enough to get any bad for me. There's no weird to me whatsoever. For me, this is a perfect, solid, good movie.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I give it good because it's just at this point it's a classic. It's so well written, and even going back and looking at all like the little nuances that Hughes wrote into the script, it just works out so well, and I appreciate it even more for that. It does make me want to do the second one relatively soon, but I think I'll hold off on that just a little bit since I'm currently in the middle of 12 rom-coms of Christmas, unfortunately, but whatever. But Chris, do you recommend Home Alone?
With my whole being. Even if it is not on your every year watch Christmas list, I would suggest adding it if it's not. And I would make the argument that this is one of the few Christmas movies that you could watch during not Christmas season. Granted, it's heavy on the Christmas. It's best during Christmas. But this is a really good movie. And I've definitely done some of the deep dives as far as, like, how the wet bandits are going to die during, like, July. Because it's truly that fun.
Yeah, no, it's just perfect. I definitely highly recommend rewatch this one. If you haven't seen it, I actually, if some people hear me say, how dare you not see it, I'd be giving a lot of shit right now. But I will say, definitely watch it, rewatch it. It's 100% worth it, so.
I completely agree.
Yeah. But now it's time for Season 6 Bingo. New season and a new game. Well, not a new season. We're halfway through the season. Chris and I are playing bingo, and you can too. Rules are simple. Players will get 1 stamp per card per episode. Cards can be found at our socials on TGETBTW_podcast on Instagram, Threads, and TGETBTW podcast on Twitter. Also, feel free to email us the request at TGETBTWpodcast@gmail.com. You can use any of the 3 bingo card variations, but each stamp must be associated with a Season 6 episode. First place is taken, second place gets to choose a deep dive and a micro review, third place gets to choose 2 micro reviews, and fourth and fifth place get to choose a micro review. So feel free to share at us on social media or email us for participation. Rules are slightly different for Chris and myself. We only get 2 stamps per deep dive. First to get to bingo in any of the good, bad, and weird categories gets to choose a movie that they feel fits that category for season 7. I've won good. And Chris, what is your first bingo?
My first spot will be on my weird card. I think I can finally, with authority, say that I have gotten you to watch, in the future, a Three Stooges movie against your will.
You have been trying to talk to me about Three Stooges for a long time. I go with you on that one.
Thank you. And then my next one puts me one away from a bingo for product placement, specifically of Pepsi, though I will make the argument that the second one, our delightful director is known as a product placement whore, and had to really tone it down for this movie specifically. And in the second one, he got a bunch of allowance, and he used all of it on the sides of planes.
Amazing. Product placement. Alright. I think the only thing I can do on my bad rating is Nicho casually insults the French.
You did manage to lightly insult the French today.
I insulted them, and I also said, how dare we steal that woman's phone.
That's true. You both insulted and also defended the French people in this movie. Congratulations.
Yeah, Nicho casually insults the French.
Lightly. Just real lightly today.
Yeah. I really don't have anything on my weird outside of you tricking me into watching movies for the future.
This is true.
Didn't come up with a theory. We're out of Nick Cage.
Unfortunately, the cage is done for now.
The food is edible.
The food is very edible in this movie.
My anime references were spot on.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, is that a bingo? Nope. I had looked down one. Nope.
You're one away, but in the wrong direction.
Yes. But yeah, that's the end of our holiday season, and also our last deep dive for 2024. It's been one hell of a year, I think.
It sure has. This was a good one to end off on, though. I enjoyed this.
Well, I mean, we have one more mic review left. So,
we sure do.
Yeah, but we will be kicking off the year with our traditional animated movie. This year we're doing something a little hornier than we've ever done before for an animated movie. So
we're finally diving into a collection that I have loved from afar for a while, and I'm surprised you have not been as deeply involved in it as I have.
Oh, I'm deep in the thick of it now.
Yeah, I know.
Because I got to get my research done early.
You've been converted. I'm so glad.
Yeah, but anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.